Leo stared at Isabelle's face for a long moment before finally lowering his gaze to the pale blue notebook in his hands. He remembered it clearly. The time her bathroom pipe burst, and he'd come over to fix it. He'd seen this exact notebook on her desk. Back then, he'd only seen it from a distance, and without her permission, he hadn't dared to pick it up. Now, holding it, he realized that while it didn't look particularly old, it had clearly been used for a long time. Isabelle had just taken exceptionally good care of it. After examining the cover, Leo carefully opened it. On the flyleaf was a simple sketch, a pencil drawing of the framed photograph she had just shown him. He turned another page, and a familiar, elegant script filled his vision. He looked up at Isabelle in surprise. "Is this a diary?" She nodded softly. A gentle stir went through Leo's heart as he continued to flip through the pages. May 15th, 2008. Rainy. It's been 12 days since we moved from the Bayview apartments. I haven't seen Leo in so long. I kind of miss him. The second to last time I saw him, he gave me a lollipop, but I was crying that day. Does he think I'm a crybaby? I'm not a crybaby. I was just in such a hurry to chase after him that I scraped my knee on the pavement, and it really, really hurt. Leo, when we meet again, you're not allowed to laugh at me. May 30th, 2008. Cloudy. Ugh. I don't think my stepmother is ever going to take me back to Bayview. Mrs. Gable is there, but more importantly, Leo is there. As soon as Dad and my stepmother go on the business trip, I'm going to have Lester drive me back. Lester is nice. I know he won't say no to me. Hee, Leo, next time I see you, I'll bring you lots and lots of snacks. Dad doesn't come home to see me very often, but when he does, he always brings snacks you can't buy anywhere else. They're super delicious, but my stepmother won't let me eat too many. But that's okay. If it's for you, I don't mind if she scolds me when I get home. And you can't share them with any other kids, because these are from Isabelle, just for you. July 24th, 2008. Sunny. Lester said the maids and the nanny all work for Dad and my stepmother. If he takes me to Bayview without permission, he could lose his job at our house. But if Lester is gone, then I won't have anyone left here that I can trust. And I can't let Lester lose his job because of me. I'm sorry, Leo. I can't come find you right now. But Lester promised he'd work really hard, and when he gets a high enough position, he could take me back to find you. Leo, please wait for me. December 25th, 2008. Snowing. Leo, Merry Christmas. July 2nd, 2009. Sunny. Leo, I get to go back to Bayview to find you tomorrow. See you tomorrow, Leo. July 3rd, 2009. Cloudy. Today, Lester took me back to Bayview. I waited in the complex all day and saw a lot of my old friends, but I didn't see you, Leo. I asked the other kids, and they said they hadn't seen you in a long time either. Leo, where did you go? October 1st, 2009. Sunny. Leo, Lester went to Bayview to ask around for me. He said you moved. I miss you so much. Will we ever see each other again? September 1st, 2013. Sunny. Leo, I'm in middle school now. What school are you at? Do you still remember me? You probably don't, but that's okay. I think about you every day. May 2nd, 2014. Sunny. Lester says, Miss, when sadness outweighs happiness, any relationship should end. But my sadness doesn't come from you. It's just because I can't find you. Leo, I will find you. November 13th, 2014. Rainy. Lester found your school, but I can't transfer there. Dad and my stepmother would never allow it. It feels like I've never had any freedom. I hate it. After Mom died, my time in Bayview was the freest I've ever felt. Leo, when I'm a little older, just a little older, I can come find you. June 3rd, 2017. Sunny. I'm transferring to Leo's school soon. He probably won't even recognize me, will he? June 5th, 2018. Sunny. Leo is such a coward. He couldn't even stand to stay for one more second. Leo's fingers gently brushed over each page, as if he could feel the emotion Isabelle poured into every word. His heart ached with a mix of tenderness and sorrow. For all these years, this girl had kept him in the deepest corner of her heart. The entire notebook was filled with entries about him. It was clear the diary existed only for him. From the moment she left Bayview, her thoughts of him had never ceased. He could also see a pattern in the entries. As she got older, she had clearly started using her cold demeanor as a shield. The first few entries were long and detailed, but they grew shorter and shorter over time, the playful tone fading away. He looked up at Isabelle. You don't mind me seeing this at all? I don't mind, because you're my boyfriend. Isabelle shook her head, a faint smile on her lips, her eyes filled with complete trust. A warmth spread through Leo's chest. He looked back down at the diary, reading for a long time before looking up again. So, the moment Lester convinced your dad to let you move out of the estate, you moved in right next door to me? MHM. Isabelle nodded, a blush rising on her cheeks. Leo's eyes softened. That tender spot in his heart stirred once more. He nodded and went to hand the diary back to her. But as he raised his hand, Isabelle shook her head. It's for you. You're not going to write in it anymore. No, because every day is spent with you now. I don't need a diary to think about you. Leo's gaze flickered. He couldn't help but pull her into a tight hug. But he'd barely held her for a few seconds before she wriggled free, her face bright red. We haven't showered since the hike. Leo blinked, responding automatically. Oh, so we both go shower at our own places, and then we can hug. Oh, Leo, you idiot. Do not have a shower. Leo. In a villa somewhere in Crestview, Landon Archer, fresh from a shower and wrapped in a white towel, stood expressionlessly before the mirror, drying his hair. Once it was dry, he stared at his reflection for a moment before walking out. A cloud of steam followed him as he opened the bathroom door. He was immediately greeted by the sight of his butler, hands clasped, head slightly bowed. The butler's gaze was fixed calmly on the floor, his posture elegant and composed. Seeing his young master emerge, the butler approached with a set of freshly prepared clothes. He bowed slightly. Sir, your clothes. Landon raised an eyebrow, his tone lazy. I'm not changing. My parents are away, so I have the whole place to myself. Besides, I was up all night hiking. I'm just going to head upstairs and crash. The butler nodded. Very well, sir. But while you were showering, Mrs. Thornton from the Thornton family arrived. When she heard you were in the shower, she said she would wait for you in the living room. So? Sharon. Yes, sir. At the mention of Sharon Thornton, Landon's languid expression vanished. He was silent for 2 seconds before taking the clothes from Butler. Go entertain Mrs. Thornton for a moment. I'll change and be right there. Of course, sir. The butler turned and left. Landon glanced in the direction of the living room, his eyes narrowing slightly. He ducked into his room, changed quickly, and then made his way downstairs. Just as expected, a very pregnant Sharon Thornton was sitting on the sofa, lovingly stroking her belly. Standing beside her was a man in a suit, likely her driver. Landon took a deep breath and plastered a delighted smile on his face. Sharon, it's been too long. Landon, you're done with your shower. Hearing his voice, Sharon turned and smiled at him. She looked him up and down, her expression sincere. Landon, a few years abroad, and you've gotten even more handsome. You and our Isabelle truly are a match made in heaven. You're too kind, Sharon. Isabelle is far too good for me. No need to be so modest. You two were childhood sweethearts. You're both exceptional. Sharon's smile was warm, completely devoid of her usual corporate severity. Her driver, Jonathan, who was standing nearby, watched this display, his eyes widening slightly. Jonathan was Sharon's dedicated driver here in Crestview. But he was more than that. She had taken a liking to him, and he had become a trusted confidant, handling many tasks for her. He had seen many sides of Sharon, the decisive executive, the subtly ruthless negotiator. But this was the first time he'd seen her look at someone with such genuine, heartfelt admiration. He had always thought of his employer as a calculating woman who rarely bothered with sentiment. Perhaps she had a truly gentle side after all. Maybe, he mused, she was even gentler with the chairman in private. Landon just smiled politely at her words and stood to pour her a glass of hot water. Sharon, I thought you were in New York. I already booked a flight to see you the day after tomorrow. I never expected you to come here yourself. Even if you were in Crestview, you could have just called. I would have come to the estate to see you. You really shouldn't be traveling so much, especially now. It's fine. My private doctor says a little exercise is a good thing. It's the mothers-to-be who do nothing that end up having more problems with the baby. Sharon smiled, then continued. You've seen Isabelle, haven't you? What do you think? Don't you think she's even more beautiful than before you left? Landon's smile didn't waver. Of course. Isabelle gets more beautiful every day. I was surrounded by girls while I was studying abroad, but the only one I ever thought about was her. I heard you and Isabelle went hiking on Eagle Peak yesterday. What? Landon was stunned. He had planned on telling Sharon about the hike with Isabelle and Leo when he went to New York. He never imagined she would already know. So, she has her eyes and ears around me now, too? The realization sent a chill down his spine. It seemed Isabelle had a very clear understanding of her stepmother. Sharon's power within the Thornton family was clearly growing. Fortunately, Landon had long ago mastered the art of keeping his thoughts and emotions off his face. He nodded immediately. That's right, Sharon. I had already made plans to go hiking with Isabelle, which is why I was planning to see you a bit later. I hope you don't mind. Isabelle is the most important woman in the world to me. Of course I don't mind, dear. Seeing you two so close makes me happier than anything. After a pause, Sharon turned her head and looked directly into Landon's eyes. Her voice became soft. By the way, Landon, I've been so busy these past 2 years. I haven't paid as much attention to Isabelle as I should have. Did you notice anything special when you saw her this time? There it is. Landon's heart skipped a beat, exactly as Isabelle predicted. He pursed his lips and shook his head slightly. Nothing special, but there's this guy, Leo Yeager. He seems pretty close to her. Looks like TSK. Never mind, Sharon. It's not important. He's just some college kid. As he spoke, a flash of contempt and ridicule crossed his face. It was gone in an instant, but Sharon's sharp eyes caught it. Seeing that, she was immensely satisfied. This was exactly the outcome she wanted. She didn't press further, just nodded. All right, I won't meddle in you young people's affairs. I trust you can handle it, Landon. Well, it's getting late. I should be going, Sharon said, rising from the sofa. Jonathan immediately stepped forward to support her arm. Landon walked her to the door. Goodbye, Sharon. I'll see you in New York in a couple of days. Now that I'm back, my family has some business proposals for Thornton Industries. I'll need you to help me set up a meeting with Richard. Oh, you can just talk to me about that. Your uncle Richard has more important things to worry about lately, Sharon said with a smile before getting into the car. Soon, Jonathan drove away, and the car disappeared into the night. Watching them leave, the smile vanished from Landon's face, replaced by a touch of melancholy. Leo, he murmured to himself, you've really stepped in it now, haven't you? He pulled out his phone and sent a text to Isabelle. Isabelle, Sharon just left my place. It went down exactly as you said it would. Per our agreement, I'm getting things started on my end. Buttercream. Oscar, say good night to him. Woof, woof, woof. Meow. Click. The sound of Isabelle's door closing left Leo standing frozen in the hallway, speechless. After a long moment, his mouth fell slightly open, his face a mask of frustration. Seriously? I was just making a suggestion. He grumbled to himself. We had a deal. You were going to let me shower at your place. Why the sudden change of heart? Leo muttered under his breath as he turned and walked back toward his own apartment. After hearing Isabelle's inner thoughts, he had worked up the courage to stay and take a shower. There was just something different about showering at her place. Besides, if she was letting him shower there this late, she couldn't possibly kick him out right after, could she? At the very least, he could have gotten another kiss out of it. But just as he was about to go home to grab his clothes, she had suddenly changed her mind for no apparent reason and practically shoved him out the door. Whatever. Staying over to shower this late probably wasn't the best idea anyway, he reasoned. Not overthinking it, he went home, showered, and got ready for bed. He hadn't had a proper night's sleep in over 24 hours, and the moment his head hit the pillow, a wave of exhaustion washed over him. Just as he was about to drift off, his phone buzzed violently from under his pillow. Ugh, who was texting me at this hour? Leo grumbled, pulling his phone out. He unlocked it to see a flood of messages from the Starfall Studios group chat. Scrolling up, he saw that Ruby and the team had been working nonstop from morning until just now, only taking a break for lunch. Sean also mentioned that several people had already applied for the positions they posted, and he had done a preliminary screening. He planned to interview them the next day or two and get them hired as soon as possible to ease the creative burden on Ruby and Quinn. Before he and Isabelle had left for Eagle Peak, Leo had mentioned in the chat that he might have poor signal and wouldn't be able to check messages. He'd told them to call if it was urgent. Since then, no one had tagged him. They hadn't even sent him the unedited footage from today's shoot for his input. Leo knew what that meant. Sean, Ruby, and the others wanted him to enjoy his trip with Isabelle without worrying about work. The thought warmed him. It was clear they truly considered him one of them. He typed a message into the group. Sean, I'm back from the hike. I'm free tomorrow, so I can handle the interviews. A voice message from Ruby popped up instantly. Leo, you're finally back. I was so swamped today, I thought I was going to die. You're coming tomorrow? We'll probably be out on a shoot, so you might be bored all alone at the studio. Sue, your big sis Ruby hereby gives you permission to bring Isabelle along. After we're done, I'll treat you both to dinner. Listening to her message, Leo shivered. Yeah, right. That last part is what you were really after, isn't it? Bring Isabelle to the studio? Not a chance. You don't want to treat us to dinner. You want to feast on all the gossip about Isabelle. Ha! Limit. Leo chatted with them for a few more minutes, then set an alarm for 8:30 a.m. and put his phone away. The next morning, sunlight streamed through a gap in the curtains, and the alarm woke him right on time. He rubbed his sleepy eyes and was about to stretch when a sharp pain shot through his calves and hips. Oof, good thing we got those massages yesterday. I can't even imagine how sore I'd be right now if we hadn't. He had to admit, hiking Eagle Peak was exhausting. Anyone without hiking experience who attempted it would probably swear off mountains for life. Just like Rex. After getting ready, Leo threw on a jacket and prepared to head to the studio. As he walked out the door, he instinctively glanced at 1003. He considered grabbing breakfast for Isabelle, but figured she was probably still asleep since it wasn't even 9 and she had nothing scheduled. He decided not to disturb her and headed for the subway to U of C. His only job today was to interview the candidates Sharon had already screened. After that, he'd analyze the viewership and follower growth data from the last couple of videos, and that would be it. The scriptwriters were already familiar with the style, so he didn't need to intervene. If he finished early, he could come back and hang out with Isabelle. TSK. I'm a master of time management, he said to himself. Unlike high school, the university didn't lock down during short breaks. He walked right onto the U of C campus, occasionally passing students who hadn't gone home for the holiday grabbing breakfast. He stopped by the campus Chatter Tea to buy 2 coffees before heading to the Fletcher Arts and Design building. He figured only Sharon would be at the studio this early. The others were probably already out shooting. But when he walked in, Sharon wasn't there. Only Don Wren sat at a computer, completely absorbed in editing a video. Hearing the door, Don glanced over. Seeing it was Leo, he gave a slight nod before immediately turning back to his screen. Hey Don, Shawn not here yet. He's here, but he went with Ruby and the others for the outdoor shoot. He knew you were coming and already contacted the candidates who passed the first screening. They should start showing up after 10. Don always spoke like that, without a hint of emotion. He rarely smiled. The only time Leo remembered seeing him smile was when their very first TikTok video took off. Leo looked at the coffees in his hand and offered one to Don. Don, man, you're here early. Here, have some coffee. Don't overwork yourself. Thanks. Don took it without ceremony and took a sip. This is the startup phase. Besides their outdoor shoots, post-production is the most important thing. I can't fall behind, so a little exhaustion is fine. Yeah, I get it, Leo nodded. He sent a message to Shawn asking how many candidates there were. Shawn replied that there were 5, 3 of whom were applying for editor positions. It was obvious Shawn was trying to lighten Don's workload and speed up the editing process. After all, the studio would eventually have more than just one account. When that happened, even 4 editors might not be enough. Soon it was 10 o'clock. Leo was about to stand up and get some fresh air when there was a knock on the studio door. Come in, Leo called out, knowing it was the first interviewee. The door opened and a voice followed. Hello, I'm here to apply for the position at your... Wait, Leo. Leo looked up, his face also showing a flash of shock. Hello, I'm here to apply for the position at your... Wait, Leo. Hearing the familiar voice, Leo froze. He looked up to see a familiar figure standing in the doorway. It was Mark Zhang, his old next-door neighbor from apartment 1002. Mark stood at the entrance to Starfall Studios, his face a mask of disbelief. He never would have guessed he'd run into Leo here. Mark, are you here to apply for a job at our studio? Mark's expression grew even more stunned. Why your studio? Leo, you work for Starfall Studios. Yeah, I'm actually the one conducting the interviews today. Holy crap, Mark exclaimed. Leo saw the resume in Mark's hand and realized he must be one of the 5 candidates scheduled for an interview this morning. Mark, come on in, have a seat. Yeah. Mark, still a bit dazed, sat down on the sofa. He looked around the studio, then back at Leo, a hint of embarrassment on his face. Leo, man, I can't believe it's been months, and this is how we meet again. I knew you'd get into a great school, but I didn't think you'd end up at U of C and running a studio like this. That's amazing. Yeah. Well, I actually joined later on. I'm not the founder, Leo explained, rubbing his nose. He'd always assumed Mark was just an ordinary programmer. He never imagined he worked in video editing. Since they were acquaintances, Leo didn't jump straight into the interview questions. Mark was also feeling a bit awkward, so he started making small talk. After a few minutes, Mark finally opened up. After I moved out of Maplewood, I was a mess because of what happened with my girlfriend. I couldn't focus on work, so I just quit. I took a month off to clear my head, but when I got back to Crestview, finding a job was harder than I thought. The pay was bad, or the companies were out of state. I ended up unemployed for a few months. Then I saw your studio's job posting online and gave it a shot. I guess I passed the initial screening. Right. Mark, can I see your resume? Mark nodded and handed his resume to Leo, then sat up straight across from him, looking decidedly uncomfortable. He couldn't wrap his head around it. The kid who lived next door a few months ago was now the one interviewing him. Worst of all, this kid knew he'd been cheated on. The more Mark thought about it, the more awkward he felt. But Leo never brought it up, acting as if he'd forgotten all about it, which made Mark feel a little better. Leo reviewed the resume, then asked a few questions Shawn had prepared. Since Don Wren was right there, Leo had Mark sit down at a computer and try editing a few clips on the spot to see if his skills were up to par. About 10 minutes later, Don nodded at Leo. Mark's skills were solid. All right, Mark, everything looks good on my end, Leo said. Our studio is offering a base salary of $4,000 a month, with bonuses calculated based on the view count of the videos you edit within the first 72 hours. The specific bonus tiers are all laid out in this contract. You can take a look. If you're good with it, we can sign the papers right now. Leo pulled out a pre-prepared contract and handed it to Mark. Seeing Leo act so professionally felt a little strange to Mark, but he knew that right now, Leo was his interviewer, not just the kid from next door. He took the documents and read them carefully. After confirming everything was in order, he signed his name. Just as they finished the paperwork, the next candidate arrived. Mark took the hint and stood up. Leo, you busy tonight? I left in such a rush last time, and with everything that happened, we never got to have a proper farewell dinner. Since we're going to be colleagues now, let me treat you to a meal. Sure, that sounds great. Can I bring someone else along? Leo said with a smile. He planned on bringing Isabelle. He wanted to introduce her to Mark before, but Mark had already moved out. Oh, not just a friend. She's my neighbor. Mark's face was a picture of astonishment. Someone new moved into 1002 after I left. 1003, actually, the night that all went down. Am I? Okay, no problem. I guess that makes her my neighbor too, even if it was just for one night, huh? Mark's expression shifted, but he agreed. He said goodbye to Leo and left the studio. Over the next few hours, Leo interviewed the remaining 4 candidates. Since they had all passed Sean's initial screening, it didn't take much effort for Leo to approve them, with Don providing on-the-spot technical evaluations. That must have been why Sean had asked Don to come in early today. Leo worked straight through until 2 in the afternoon, not even stopping for lunch. It was 2:30 by the time he left the U of C campus. He bought a breakfast burrito from a street vendor and checked his phone, noticing a message from Isabelle sent over an hour ago. Leo, you're not home. He immediately called her back. I had to take care of some things at the studio this morning. Just finished up. Where do you want to go? Isabelle's voice on the other end was mournful. You didn't even tell me you were leaving. I wanted to, but it was early and I was worried I'd wake you. Oh, I'm doing laundry. We can do something after I'm done. Should I? Head back now. Okay. Leo hung up and headed straight back to the Maplewood. As he arrived at the door to 1003, something occurred to him. Wait a minute. Did she just say she was doing laundry? That can't be right. I remember her saying her clothes either go to the dry cleaner or a maid handles them. Some of her outfits she only wears once. Why is she doing her own laundry today? Puzzled, he rang the doorbell. A flurry of frantic scrambling came from inside, and then the door swung open. Woof, woof, woof. The door opened to reveal Buttercream, tongue lolling, with his paws on the handle. He had clearly opened the door. Leo crouched down and patted his head. Hey, buddy, where's your mom? Woof. Buttercream wagged his tail toward the bathroom. Leo looked over and saw the bathroom door was open. Isabelle must still be in there. He slipped on a pair of house slippers and walked toward the bathroom. When he reached the doorway, his world stopped. Isabelle was kneeling on the floor, her entire upper body plunged inside the washing machine. All he could see were her long, slender, pale legs and her perfectly round, upturned rear. Leo swallowed hard. Is she stuck? And wait, this plot. Is this for real? Leo stood frozen in the bathroom doorway, staring at Isabelle, who was halfway inside the washing machine. He was completely stunned for several seconds. Hearing him, Isabelle must have realized he was there. She wiggled a bit and finally managed to pull herself out of the machine. Her hair was a mess as she knelt on the floor, looking up at him with wide, innocent eyes. From his vantage point, looking down, and with her wearing loose-fitting loungewear with a slightly wide collar, Leo was treated to a view that was difficult to describe. He swallowed hard again, his voice coming out a bit raspy. Are you washing clothes or washing yourself? I forgot to take something out of a pocket, and it fell to the bottom of the machine. I have to get it, she said, pouting, a faint blush on her cheeks. Her posture was making it incredibly difficult for Leo not to let his imagination run wild. He cleared his throat. Ahem, let me get it for you. Oh. She nodded softly and started to stand up. But as she rose, she stumbled and fell toward him. Luckily, Leo's reflexes were quick. He caught her, his hands landing on her waist. The soft, supple feel of her slender waist sent a jolt of nervous energy through him. Isabelle leaned against him like a soft doll. The blush on her cheeks deepened. She scrambled to regain her footing, but only managed to press herself closer against him. Leo's breathing quickened. He fought to stay calm, then reached up and gently squeezed her warm, flushed cheek. He narrowed his eyes. You're doing this on purpose, aren't you? No, I'm not. Totally on purpose. A smirk played on Leo's lips, but he didn't press the issue. He leaned into the washing machine and retrieved the hairpin that had fallen inside. But he immediately noticed something. The hairpin was completely dry. It couldn't have fallen out of a pocket during a wash cycle. It would have been soaked. So, even the part about looking for something in the washing machine, that was on purpose too? Leo paused, glancing back at Isabelle. His eyes narrowed again, but she had already taken the hairpin, her expression returning to its usual cool composure. She pursed her lips and said, "Can you feed Buttercream and Oscar? I still have a few more things to wash." "Sure, but why the sudden interest in laundry? Didn't you say you usually send your clothes out or have a maid do it?" "I do my own laundry at school," she said flatly. "I'm just used to it." "Really? MHM? Of course not. I need the practice. How else am I supposed to do your laundry in the future?" Hearing her thoughts, Leo's gaze softened. He didn't say anything else, just turned and went to the living room to feed the two little critters. Since no one usually lived here, there was only a small bag of pet food in the living room to keep it from going stale. But Isabelle had already fed them last night and this morning, and Buttercream had a big appetite. The bag was nearly empty. Leo remembered getting a large bag of dog food down from a high cabinet on the balcony for her before. He headed that way to get the main supply. As he reached the balcony and looked up to open the cabinet, his eyes fell on the clothes hanging on the indoor drying rack. To be precise, her underwear. Black. Lace. Leo's breath hitched. He stared at the familiar-sized lingerie, and his heart began to pound uncontrollably. He tried to calm himself, but the image was seared into his mind. Taking a deep breath, he slowly raised his hand to open the cabinet. His movements felt stiff and unnatural as he retrieved the dog food. He quickly turned and left the balcony, terrified Isabelle would notice he'd seen her unmentionables drying there. Back in the living room, his mind was still racing. He fed Buttercream and Oscar, his thoughts periodically drifting back to that image. Woof woof. Buttercream, seeming to notice Leo's frequent glances toward the balcony, barked at him in protest. Startled, Leo quickly looked away. "Shh, quiet," he whispered. "If your mom sees you, I might never get to feed you again. Besides, she's my girlfriend. What's wrong with me? Looking at her clothes? At least she's not like those pet owners who have no shame and just throw everything together." After feeding them, Leo played with the pets for a while. Isabelle finished her laundry and returned to the balcony to hang the rest of it. She seemed to realize something. When Leo snuck another glance a few moments later, the black lingerie was gone. Then, Isabelle turned on her computer and tilted her chin up at him. "Leo, let's play a game." "It's been a while." Leo replied automatically. "Didn't we just kiss yesterday?" "Huh." Leo stopped, turning to look at her. She was sitting at the computer, looking genuinely confused, apparently really wanted to play a game. Realizing he had completely misunderstood, Leo's face flushed red. He cleared his throat and scurried over to the seat next to her, pretending nothing happened. "Ahem, right, games. They played for over an hour before Leo's phone buzzed. It was a message from Mark Zhang. "Location pin, Leo. We're eating here tonight. Sent you the address. I can get there by 6:30. Let me know when you're close." The message reminded Leo of their dinner plans. He turned to Isabelle. "Let's call a day here. Get ready. I'm taking you out to dinner. Remember the neighbor from 1002 I was going to introduce you to when you first moved in? Mark?" "I remember. He was at the studio this morning for an interview." Leo quickly explained what had happened. "Oh, okay. No more games. I'm going to go do my makeup." Leo scratched his head. "You don't have to. It's just a casual dinner." Isabelle's face immediately fell. "Yes, I do." "Leo, you absolute blockhead." Okay. Go to your makeup. I'll wait," Leo said quickly, seeing her pouty expression. Isabelle's lips jutted out, but she got up and went to her bedroom to get ready. Leo sat in the living room, feeling a mix of helplessness and amusement. Isabelle was always so cool and composed. These rare glimpses of her more girlish side were surprisingly endearing. She had definitely softened up since she first moved into the Maplewood. Back then, he didn't even know what her smile looked like. A little after 6 that evening, Leo and Isabelle arrived at the restaurant Mark had sent. It wasn't a Michelin star establishment, but it was certainly upscale. When Leo saw the entrance, his steps faltered, his expression shifting slightly. Noticing his change in demeanor, Isabelle tilted her head. "What's wrong?" "HM? Oh, nothing. I'm just on a text Mark." Leo shook his head, not wanting to get into it with her, and pulled out his phone. The truth was, the restaurant was a bit fancier than he'd expected. Before Mark moved out, they had eaten together a few times, but it was usually the food truck park. The most they had ever splurged was a place that cost maybe $50 a person. This place looked like it was easily in the $200 plate range. For a girl like Isabelle, that was nothing. But for Mark, This was clearly a high-end restaurant. Leo knew he'd only mentioned bringing a friend, a neighbor Mark had never even met. He could have chosen any ordinary place, but he had booked a table here. Leo had seen Mark's resume. He was 29, well past the age of trying to show off just for the sake of it. Besides, Leo hadn't even said if the new neighbor was a man or a woman. There was no need for Mark to pick such an expensive place to save face. Leo quickly understood. Mark no longer saw him as just a friend. He saw him as a superior at his new company. Sigh, you didn't have to do this, Mark. That was exactly what Leo had been afraid of. It's why he had been vague during the interview, only saying he was in charge of hiring, not mentioning his stake in Starfall Studios. But it was clear Mark had figured out Leo's position was significant and was trying to curry favor with this dinner. Leo didn't like that feeling. He quickly got a reply. Leo, you're here? Great. Come on in with your new neighbor. I'm at the table by the window. Leo took Isabelle's hand and they entered the restaurant. They spotted Mark right away, who stood and waved them over. Mark, hope we didn't keep you waiting, Leo said with a faint smile as they approached. Mark shook his head, grinning. Not at all. I just got here myself. And this is your... Whoa. His gaze shifted to the woman beside Leo. His jaw dropped, his eyes filled with pure astonishment. He saw Leo holding Isabelle's hand and couldn't help but exclaim, Leo, I thought you were bringing the new neighbor from 1003. What did you get, girlfriend? Leo rubbed his nose. Well, she is my neighbor. She's also my girlfriend. Mark's eyes went wide. He stared at Leo, then at Isabelle, his mind struggling to process the information. Ahem, it's a long story. I'll explain over dinner. Anyway, this is Isabelle Thornton. She lives in 1003, and she's my girlfriend. Then, to Isabelle, he said, and this is Mark, the neighbor I was telling you about. Isabelle offered Mark a small smile. Mark nodded repeatedly, looking genuinely impressed. Leo, you lucky dog. This girl is absolutely beautiful. I'm 29 and outside of movie stars. No, wait. Your girlfriend is prettier than most movie stars. She has this aura about her, too. You two look perfect together. Mark, you're exaggerating. So Mark is a good person. No wonder he used to live next door to my Leo. Hearing Isabelle's thoughts, Leo's lips twitched. Seriously? People usually go out into the world and find out no one is trustworthy. You leave home, and suddenly everyone is a good person. New York City, Chairman's Office, Thornton Industries. Sir, Innovatech has officially terminated the partnership. According to the contract, we are in breach, and the total penalty comes to $10 million. The secretary stood before Richard Thornton's desk, reporting from file in her hand. Richard's stern face creased into a deep frown. I thought I already handled the Innovatech situation. Why are they still terminating? You did speak with them, sir. But for some reason, a week ago, they insisted on termination. The reason they gave. What's the reason? Spit it out. Richard snapped. The reason given was that our company's market value has declined too rapidly recently, making us a high-risk partner. What kind of reason is that? The secretary looked troubled. The contract did include a clause stating that if our market value fell below a predetermined threshold during the partnership period, Innovatech could terminate the contract without cause, and we would be considered the party in breach. At that, Richard Thornton's anger boiled over. The $10 million penalty was trivial, but if news of the terminated partnership got out at this critical stage, the fallout would be far worse than just a monetary loss. Who negotiated this deal? Richard's voice was low and dangerous. Tell him to go to finance and pick up his last paycheck. Immediately, the secretary's expression changed. She hesitated, unable to speak. Noticing her reaction, Richard raised an eyebrow. What? Was it one of the board members? No, not exactly. Then why are you still standing there? The secretary fidgeted for a long moment before finally saying, Sir, the person in charge of this partnership works for the missus. She thinks very highly of him. Sir, the person in charge of this partnership works for the missus. She thinks very highly of him. When Richard Thornton heard his secretary's reply, he froze, then sank into a long, heavy silence. For the past 2 months, he felt like he'd been hearing that same answer over and over again. Yes, he had been the one to allow his wife, Sharon, to take on a key role in the company and build her own team. When they first met, she was just an ordinary woman. He had married her because she provided him with immense emotional support and was strikingly beautiful. After joining the Thornton family, she had dedicated herself to lightening his workload, spending her free time reading and studying business management, even taking private courses. At first, Richard hadn't understood. Then, one day, she had curled up against him and whispered, Darling, it hurts me to see you so exhausted every day. I want to help share the burden. I know you have a secretary, and you don't really need my help. But as your wife, sitting at home while you work yourself to the bone, it makes me feel so helpless. Please, give me a position at the company. I'm not ambitious, just something where I can help take some of the pressure off you. Richard Thornton didn't get to be chairman of a massive corporation by being a fool, but she was his wife. Without another word, he gave her a position. She quickly demonstrated an astonishing talent for management and an incredible capacity to learn. Within 2 short years, she had genuinely eased a significant portion of his workload, never once complaining. And every evening, when he came home, she was there to offer him the gentlest care. Gradually, Richard came to see Sharon as an excellent wife, not just virtuous, but a true partner in his career. He promoted her again and again, until she held a position on par with some of the company's shareholders. But starting this year, with the explosion of short-form video, some of the company's divisions had taken a hit. To counter this, Sharon had personally promoted several new managers and implemented a raft of new policies. But with new departments and new leadership came inevitable problems. Every time one of her initiatives resulted in a loss, Richard had absorbed the pressure for her. Had anyone else made those mistakes, he would have fired them without hesitation. But this was his wife, and her intentions were to help him. He couldn't bring himself to reprimand her. However, over the past 2 months, the mistakes made by her appointees had become more and more frequent. Richard's patience was wearing thin. He could tolerate an occasional loss, but this constant stream of failures was something he, as chairman, could no longer ignore. The other shareholders would be furious soon. After a moment of consideration, he told his secretary, "I don't care whose man he is. Do as I said. Sir, perhaps you should reconsider." Hearing his secretary defy his order, Richard's brows knitted together. He looked up, his gaze sharp and imposing, his voice dropping to a low growl. "Do you have any idea what you're saying?" "Sir, please don't be angry." A bead of sweat trickled down the secretary's forehead. She brushed a stray hair from her face and quickly explained, "It's just that. The missus is several months pregnant. This is when a woman's emotions are most volatile. If you do this, and she finds out, she might get the wrong idea. She loves you so much, she'll probably think she's causing you trouble. That would be an emotional burden on her, and I know that's the last thing you would want." She paused, then straightened her posture. "Of course, sir. I'm under your direct command. If you insist, I will carry out your order immediately." "Wait." Richard's tense expression softened. "Right. How could I have forgotten? Sharon was pregnant. If he fired one of her key people at a time like this, what would she think?" He rubbed his temples and said, "Fine. Leave for now. If Innovatech wants to terminate, let them. Pay the penalty, but get the PR team on it first. I want to make sure this news doesn't spark a media frenzy." "Yes, sir. I'll see to it at once." The secretary nodded, gathered the files, and left the office. Once she was gone, Richard rose from his chair and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. He stared down at the traffic flowing stories below, then glanced at the framed photo of him and Sharon on his desk. A rare smile touched his stern face. "Sharon," he murmured, "you've been working so hard lately, carrying our child, and still worrying about the company for me." Meanwhile, Rochelle, the secretary, walked out of the chairman's office and went straight to the restroom. She checked every stall to ensure she was alone before ducking into one and pulling out her phone. The call connected to a silent line. The person on the other end was clearly waiting for her to speak first. Rochelle took a deep breath. "Ms. Thornton, it's me, Rochelle." "Ah, Rochelle. What is it?" "Ma'am, I've just reported the Innovatech termination to the chairman. It was exactly as you predicted. He was not willing to let it slide this time. I used the script you gave me to persuade him. In the end, he decided to suppress the issue and have the PR team manage the fallout." A soft laugh came from the other end. "I see. You didn't give anything away, did you? Don't worry, Ms. Thornton. Even if something were to happen to me, I would never betray you," Rochelle said, her tone deeply respectful. If Richard Thornton had heard this conversation, he would have been floored. He would never have imagined that his secretary of 10 years had become one of Sharon's loyalists. "Good. But based on his reaction, we need to accelerate our plans. Otherwise, some of his board members are going to start making noise." "Understood, ma'am." After ending the call, Sharon stroked her pregnant belly, a thoughtful smile playing on her lips. She had Richard figured out completely. She knew he would be hesitant to act while she was pregnant, allowing her to get away with anything. "Richard, I hope you don't blame me in the end." "Oh, wait. You have no right to blame me. You could do that to your own daughter. What's to stop you from doing the same to me one day?" Sharon's eyes narrowed. She stroked her belly again, then pulled out her phone, found a contact, simply labeled him, and made the call. When he answered, her voice became incredibly gentle. You should come back and see the baby. He misses his daddy. Leo, I want more. You sure? You can't handle this much spice. Your mouth is going to be swollen. It's good. I love it. I want it. Isabelle looked at him with wide, watery eyes, shimmering with a plea he couldn't resist. He was completely powerless against that look. With a helpless shake of his head, he started peeling another spicy crawfish for her. He had to admit, the crawfish at this place was incredible. The numbing sensation was perfect, but the spiciness was off the charts. Even Leo was struggling a bit, to say nothing of Isabelle. This level of heat was probably perfect for Clara Shun. He'd have to remember to tell Kevin to bring her here sometime. Across the table, Mark Zhang watched the young couple's interaction with a wistful smile. It inevitably made him think of his ex-girlfriend. He sighed, his eyes full of envy. Ah, young love. Really makes you nostalgic. Mark, Leo asked, have you not dated anyone since then? Mark gave a bitter smile. After what happened, any normal person would swear off relationships for a while. It really messes you up. My ex and I were together since college. 6 years. If you hadn't sent me that message that day, I never would have believed she could do that to me behind my back. When we were at the police station, she just kept begging me to forgive her. If the image of her in my bed with that guy wasn't burned into my brain, I might have caved. As he spoke, his expression darkened. Leo wanted to comfort him, but couldn't find the right words. There was really nothing you could say to make something like that better. Isabelle, however, hadn't known the full story behind Mark's sudden move. Head down, she continued to eat the crawfish Leo peeled for her, but her ears were perked up, soaking in the gossip. Leo quickly noticed and kicked her leg gently under the table, giving her a look that said, cut it out. This was a painful memory, not some juicy story. Isabelle pouted, but refocused her full attention on the crawfish. The mention of his ex had made Mark's eyes well up again. He called the waiter over and ordered a case of beer. He looked at Leo. Leo, you drink? If you do, have a few with me. He drinks. Before Leo could answer, Isabelle piped up, her cheeks puffed out with crawfish. Mark blinked, then chuckled and filled a glass for Leo. Leo shot her a sideways glance, but she was already focused on her food again, as if nothing had happened. Leo gently pushed the glass away. Ahem, Mark, I'll pass. I have to be at the studio tomorrow, and if I drink, I'll sleep in and mess things up. Right. Well, I guess I'll take it easy too. I have to report for my first day tomorrow, Mark said, then started drinking by himself. Just then, Leo's phone vibrated on the table. It was a call from Sean Shao. He answered it right there. The moment he picked up, Sean's ecstatic voice exploded from the speaker. Leo, it blew up. It blew up. This time it really blew up. Sean's voice was so loud that even Mark, sitting across from them, could hear it. Leo was taken aback. What blew up? The video. Yesterday evening, I posted the video with the ad placement. Since it was our first one, I was worried about audience backlash, so I didn't even dare to check the stats. Just now, after 24 hours, I logged in to post today's video and saw it. It's at 450,000 likes, and it's still climbing. 450,000? Leo's jaw dropped. Though TikTok had only been around for a couple of years, the biggest viral hits were already reaching millions of likes. Anything over 100,000 was considered a minor hit, and 200,000 was a solid success. To hit 450,000 in just 24 hours meant they had a monster on their hands. Once a video gained that much traction that quickly, the algorithm would push it into an even bigger traffic pool, ensuring continued exposure. The realization hit Leo, and he finally understood Sean's excitement. He could feel his own heart pounding. If that's the case, Leo said, his voice trembling with excitement, then our revenue from this ad should be at least 3 to 5 times what we projected. That means it could be over $150,000. Exactly. Damn. Leo couldn't help but suck in a sharp breath. We can talk details when you get to the studio tomorrow, Sean said. I'm calling Ruby and Quinn now. They still don't know. He hung up abruptly. Leo gripped his phone. A thrill unlike any he'd ever felt coursing through him. If this was real, the studio was about to expand again, which meant he glanced at Isabelle, who was still looking at him, confused. He was overcome with the urge to grab her and spin her around. The bigger Starfall Studios became, the smaller the gap between them would be. This was the real reason he had bet everything on joining them. Isabelle blinked at him, her expression adorably blank. Leo, what happened? You're shaking. She reached out and smoothed a stray lock of his hair. That simple touch was the final straw. Leo grabbed her face with both hands and pressed his lips firmly against hers. MMPH. Isabelle's eyes flew open in shock, her mind going completely blank. All Leo could taste was a fiery, numbing spice. Oh, so a kiss can taste like spicy crawfish. I guess I'm just part of their foreplay now. That was the first thought that crossed Mark Zhang's mind as he watched Leo kiss Isabelle. He let out a bitter laugh and drained his beer glass. He remembered just a few months ago, before his ex had cheated, or rather, before he'd found out, he would bring her along whenever he went out with Leo. Back then, he was the one rubbing his relationship in Leo's face. Funny how things change. Isabelle was still dazed from a sudden kiss. Her cheeks were flushed, and she looked like a confused kitten. After Leo pulled away, she pouted and glanced around nervously. Thankfully, it had happened so fast that none of the other patrons seemed to have noticed. Leo's heart was still hammering in his chest. He took a sip of water to calm down. Mark finally spoke up. Leo, was that someone from the studio on the phone? Yeah, the studio head. The video we posted yesterday went viral. 450,000 likes in 24 hours, and it's still climbing. It could hit 1 million within 72 hours. Whoa. The news made Mark suck in a breath, his eyes widening. He had been a video editor at a social media company before joining Starfall. He knew exactly what those numbers meant. Seeing his reaction, Leo continued. And to top it off, it was our first video with an ad integration. Based on the terms of the contract, the revenue from this single video should be over $150,000. Mark frowned. Leo, I wasn't in the ad department of my old job, but I know a little about revenue from ad placements. From what I saw during the screening, given your account's current follower count, it seems pretty tough to make that much from a single video. It's not just from the ad. There's also the payout from the platform's creator fund. It's a bit complicated, but you'll get the hang of it once you officially start, Leo explained openly. At most companies, revenue models were a closely guarded secret. But Starfall's office was so small that editors, creatives, and scriptwriters all worked in the same space. It was only a matter of time before everyone knew. Leo had already been thinking they needed a bigger office, but that would have to wait until after the fall break. There was simply no time to organize a move right now. Leo, if I remember right, your studio hasn't even been officially running for 6 months, has it? That's right. To achieve this much already is incredible. I worked at my last company for years, and we never had a video perform this well on any platform. You guys did it in no time. It looks like joining Starfall was a really good decision. A genuine smile finally broke through Mark's gloomy expression. This felt like the first piece of good news he'd had in months. Leo ate his food, seemingly unfazed. In reality, he hadn't needed to share the details of the call with Mark. He did it deliberately because he recognized Mark's potential value. Mark's old company, while not a media giant, was far larger than Starfall. By subtly showing him that Starfall had a much brighter future, Leo was planting a seed. If he could make Mark feel like he was on the inside, there was a good chance Mark might eventually poach some of his talented former colleagues. That was exactly what Leo wanted. With experienced people on board, Starfall Studios would grow even faster. Leo wasn't like Sharon and the others. He wanted the studio to reach terrifying new heights in the shortest time possible. After all, the Thornton family is a mountain that's just a little too high. He glanced at Isabelle, his eyes filled with adoration. All right, I'm calling a night, Leo. I'm heading home to crash. See you at the studio tomorrow. Okay, get home safe, Mark. Leo held Isabelle's hand as they stood outside the restaurant, saying goodbye to a swaying Mark, who had downed 7 beers. Just as Mark disappeared into the night, Leo's phone buzzed again. It was a message from Kevin Xiong. The message was a picture of Clara Shun, wearing an apron and chopping vegetables in a rustic-looking kitchen. Leo, Clara, and I made it to the Black Fork region. She's making dinner. Leo's eyebrows shot up. Whoa, this kid. I thought he was just worried about her traveling alone. Now he's in her house. Isabelle leaned over curiously to look at his phone. Seeing the picture, her eyes flickered. Is that Clara? Yeah. Kevin went with her back to the Ozarks. Oh, that knucklehead went home with Clara. When is my Leo going to come home with me? Leo was busy typing a reply to Kevin and didn't notice Isabelle sneak her own phone out. Her slender fingers flew across the screen for a moment before she quickly put it away. When Leo finished texting, he turned to her. Should we head back to the Maplewood? Or do you want to walk around for a bit? Isabelle pursed her lips. I have to go back to the estate tonight, she said quietly. All my clean clothes at the apartment are in the wash. Okay, is Lester coming to get you? Isabelle hesitated for a moment, then looked up at him. She narrowed her eyes and said in a low voice, Lester's sick. You have to take me home. Lester's sick? Leo blinked, immediately sensing something was off. Lester was the one who had driven them to the restaurant this evening. How could he have gotten sick in the span of one dinner? Leo narrowed his eyes, looking at Isabelle skeptically. How do you know Lester's sick? I just texted him to come pick us up, and that's what he said. Isabelle's expression was cool and unreadable, giving no hint that she might be lying. Just then, the phone in her hand rang. She glanced at Leo, then answered it on speaker. "Miss, cough cough. I'm running a 102-degree fever right now. I really can't come get you and Mr. Yeager, but don't worry, miss. Cough cough. I've already contacted another driver to come get you. He's leaving from the estate, so it might be a little while." Because the call was on speaker, Leo could clearly hear Lester's hoarse voice. It certainly sounded convincing. Isabelle just hummed in acknowledgement. "Don't worry about it. Leo will take me home. You get some rest, Lester. Thank you for your concern, miss." She hung up and tilted her chin up at Leo, as if to say, "See, he really is sick, and you didn't believe me." The look made Leo flush with embarrassment. He cleared his throat. But didn't Lester say he arranged for another driver? I don't have a car, so." "We'll take a taxi." Leo raised an eyebrow. "I feel like you're tricking me into going to your family's estate." "I'm not." Though her tone was still cool, her eyes darted away for a second. Leo didn't catch it, and since she was asking him to take her home, it felt a little ridiculous to refuse. Besides, he had wanted to see the Thornton estate for a while now. At the same time, Lester hung up the phone and looked at the text conversation with his young miss from a few minutes ago, a wry smile on his face. "Lester, call me in a minute and say you have a fever and can't pick me and Leo up. I'm taking Leo back to the estate." Seeing the message, Lester's first thought was, the miss is tricking Mr. Yeager again. Sigh. "Miss, oh miss. Mr. Yeager is clearly so fond of you. You could just tell him directly. Why go to all this trouble?" He muttered to himself, shaking his head. He then dialed the number for the Thornton estate's head housekeeper. After Lester had discovered that one of the bodyguards, Hugh, had been leaking information about Isabelle to a maid, he had, per Isabelle's instructions, gradually replaced all the original staff. The new hires were all personally vetted by him to ensure no more information would get back to Sharon. A middle-aged man's voice answered. "Mr. Lester." "Yes. Have all the maids and staff clear out of the main house within the next half hour. The young miss is on her way back." The housekeeper paused. "Mr. Lester, aren't you bringing her back yourself?" "I'm not coming back. Don't ask questions you shouldn't. Until the miss gives an order, no staff are to be seen in the main house." "Understood, sir. I'll give the order now." After ending the call, Lester sent a final text to Isabelle. "Miss, the estate is ready." Leo and Isabelle flagged down a taxi on the side of the road. "Where to, folks?" the driver asked. "The Thornton estate," Isabelle said flatly. The driver paused, then chuckled. "Sorry, miss, can't do that. You two must not be from around here. The Thornton estate isn't like some of those other mansions you can tour. It's private property, not open to the public." "I know. That's where we're going. But it's not open. There's nothing else out there but the estate. It's a bit of a drive, and if you can't get in..." The driver was genuinely concerned they were wasting their time and money. The fare would be close to $100. He figured they were college students, maybe tourists in Crestview for the break who didn't know any better. After his second attempt to dissuade them, Isabelle was starting to get annoyed. She pouted, her brows furrowing, and was about to say, "It's my house. Why wouldn't I be able to get in?" But Leo cut her off. "Ahem, sir, just head that way. Don't worry. We'll pay the fare even if we can't get in." "It's not about the fare. I just don't want you two to make the trip for nothing. By the time we get there, it'll be almost 10. It's practically in the middle of nowhere. If you can't get into the estate, it's just pitch black darkness." "It's fine, sir. Just drive." All right. You young people just don't listen, do you?" The driver sighed and put the car in gear. Soon, the taxi approached the Thornton estate. Even from the main road, Leo was stunned by the view. He had imagined Isabelle's family home would be ridiculously extravagant, but he had never imagined this level of opulence. The driver slowed down. "Folks, if we go any further, the security guards are going to come out in their golf carts and run us off. If you're just curious, I can drive around the perimeter so you could get a look." "That won't be necessary. Please drive right in," Isabelle said calmly. The driver was completely baffled. He shook his head vigorously. "No way, I can't do that. First off, we'd never get through the gate. And even if we did, we'd be in big trouble if the security guards saw us. You know about trespassing laws, right? This is a private residence. People like this, who knows what their security is packing? We drive in there, next thing you know, we've got a laser sight on our foreheads." Listening to the driver's earnest warnings, Leo couldn't hold back a smile. This guy, he has a flair for the dramatic. Before Leo could say anything, Isabelle said coolly, "It's fine. I give you permission. Drive in." The driver laughed out loud. "You give me permission? Haha, you're a funny one, miss. You're not the owner. Your permission doesn't mean a thing." Just then, the taxi pulled up to the main gate. Two guards in black suits stood watch. Seeing the taxi approach, they frowned and started walking toward the car. The driver's face paled. He slammed on the brakes and was about to throw the car into reverse when Isabelle calmly rolled down her window. The guards' expressions were stern, but the moment they saw the face in the back seat, they stopped short and bowed their heads respectfully. "Miss!" The driver froze, his eyes bugging out. His foot slipped off the clutch, and the car stalled. "Miss?" he stammered, whipping his head around to stare at Isabelle. "Oh no, did I really just pick up the owner of the estate?" The Uber driver stared at Leo and Isabelle in the rearview mirror, his shock impossible to hide. When he'd first picked them up, he'd been struck by Isabelle's otherworldly, Ice Queen beauty. But he'd been driving in Crestview for a long time. He'd seen it all. In a city this size, picking up influencers and celebrities was just part of the job. Hell, when he was younger, he'd even given Keanu Reeves a ride to the airport once. He just never thought he'd have the owners of a legendary Thornton estate in his back seat. "Ahem," the driver said, his face flushing with embarrassment. "So, you're the owners of this place. My mistake. So, should I keep driving in?" "Yes," Isabelle said, her voice as cool and crisp as ever. The driver fumbled to put the car back in drive. As the two guards waved him through the ornate gates, he drove slowly, his eyes wide as he took in the breathtaking, manicured landscape. Watching him, Leo couldn't suppress a smirk. Man, it's a good thing Isabelle is so composed. If this were Rex Gao, his grin would be splitting his face right now. Leo could practically picture it. Rex seizing the moment, laying it on thick with the driver, turning into the main character of some cheesy soap opera where the downtrodden heir finally reveals his true identity. The estate was bigger than Leo could have imagined, almost beyond his comprehension. A property this vast, with its lavish European architecture, he guessed it had to be worth a couple $100 million, easy. The thought soured his mood. This estate was just one of the Thornton family's properties in Crestview. Isabelle's father and stepmother were based in New York City now, and Leo knew their setup. There had to be even more extravagant. The fact that a single one of their homes was worth that much. Trying to get on Isabelle's level feels like a fantasy, he thought with a bitter internal laugh. For a fleeting moment, he felt ridiculous. Her family had this kind of wealth because of generations of work. What made him think a decade of studying hard could ever compete with 3 generations of accumulated connections and capital? As if sensing the shift in his mood, Isabelle's gaze softened. She squeezed his hand. Leo turned to look at her. Her eyes, shimmering in the moonlight filtering through the window, were filled with a disarming tenderness. The darkness in his mind evaporated, chased away by her quiet warmth. He squeezed her hand back, a genuine smile returning to his face. She hadn't said a word, but she had said everything. Moonlight painted the long, winding driveway in a silvery glow. They sat in silence, hands clasped tightly, as if time had stopped just for them. The driver, meanwhile, kept sneaking glances in the rearview mirror. His expression shifted. A man pushing 50, he could see the story in a single look, the connection, and the chasm between them. He let out a silent sigh. Once upon a time, I had a girl like that, too. Someone from another world. The car glided past a meticulously sculpted garden and pulled up before the main residence. It was a palatial mansion, a fortress of towering stone pillars and intricate carvings that looked like something out of a fairy tale. The sight stirred a fresh wave of complicated feelings in Leo. He knew the gap between him and Isabelle wasn't just about money. It was about lifestyles, social circles, entire worlds. But he also knew that if Starfall Studios kept climbing, even if he couldn't match the Thornton Empire overnight, at least he wouldn't be a nobody. The car came to a smooth stop. "Ahem, we're here, folks," the driver announced, breaking the spell. Leo and Isabelle stepped out, gazing up at the magnificent structure. Taking a deep breath, Leo shook off the heavy thoughts and turned to Isabelle with a playful grin. "Your place is huge, you know? This whole estate is bigger than the entire Maplewood apartment complex." A faint smile touched Isabelle's lips. She shook her head. "It is, but compared to here, I like the Maplewood better." The driver, overhearing this, felt his stomach clench. "I didn't even eat dinner, so how am I suddenly so full?" He cleared his throat. "Excuse me, folks. Who's covering the fare?" "Oh, right. Almost forgot." Leo slapped his forehead and pulled out his phone to pay. Then he paused. "Actually, can you wait to end the trip? I still need a ride back." "Huh?" The driver stared, completely baffled. Isabelle's brow furrowed. She tugged on Leo's arm, pouting slightly. "It's just me and the security staff here tonight." But this place is so remote. If you leave, I'll never get another ride back," Leo said, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's fine," Isabelle said coolly. "I can have one of the guards drive you." "Oh, okay then." Leo hesitated before nodding. He paid the driver, who promptly turned the car around and drove away. Once he was gone, Leo followed Isabelle into the main house. The moment he stepped inside, he was hit by a level of luxury he'd only ever seen in movies. The sheer scale of the mansion was insane. He swallowed hard and pulled out his phone, snapping a few pictures. "Why are you taking photos?" Isabelle tilted her head, a puzzled look in her eyes. Leo grinned. "To show Rex when I get back to campus. He's always bragging about his family's villa, but compared to this, his place is a glorified shed." Isabelle thought. Leo's about to flex on Rex again. Wait a second. Leo plopped down on a plush leather sofa, a thought suddenly striking him. "Didn't you say this place was full of maids and housekeepers? How come it's just you here tonight?" He looked at Isabelle, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. "They only come if I notify them in advance that I'll be here," she replied, her expression unreadable. "Really? In a place this big? Shouldn't the staff live on-site?" "Leo, you can't believe everything you see in movies." Isabelle delivered the line with such a straight face that Leo couldn't tell if she was bluffing. He stared at her for a long moment, trying to read her, but she gave nothing away. Sensing his scrutiny, Isabelle quickly changed the subject. She flicked on the enormous flat-screen TV. "I'm going to take a shower," she announced, lifting her chin. "After I'm done, I'll have a guard take you home." "Sound good?" Leo didn't press further. He figured she was just a little spooked being in a massive house alone. He just watched some TV, wait for her to finish her shower, and head back. It was that simple. Seeing that he dropped it, Isabelle scurried upstairs to grab her things and disappeared into a bathroom. Leo idly flipped through the channels. "Wow," he muttered himself. "Haven't watched actual TV in years." He was completely oblivious to the fact that, in a room on the first floor, two maids were peeking through a crack in the door, watching him with anxious eyes. Frances stared at Leo on the sofa, her face a mask of panic. "Liza, what do we do?" she whispered to her coworker. "Miss Thornton and the young master are back. If she finds us in the main house, the head butler will fire us for sure." Liza was nervous too, but mostly she was curious about Leo. She stood on her tiptoes, trying to get a better look at his profile. After a moment, she murmured, "He's handsome, but he doesn't have the same aura as Miss Thornton. He seems more like us, you know? Normal. I always figured she'd end up with some Ivy League legacy kid." "Liza, it's not our place to guess about her boyfriends. Just help me figure out what to do. I just think, with her being who she is, she deserves a perfect Prince Charming." Liza muttered, then turned her attention back to the problem. "Don't panic, Frances." She went upstairs to shower. "He's watching TV, so he probably won't move for a while. If we're quiet, we can slip out the east door. He'll never hear us." "No, we can't. The east door is always locked from the outside at night." "Damn." Liza frowned, thinking, "Okay, let me just stay put. It's not like they're going to come in here. We can sneak out in the middle of the night." Frances looked horrified. "Are you crazy, mister?" Lee specifically told the head butler to clear the house, and she brought him home. "Tonight, they're definitely going to. You know, we have to get out of here whether we get caught or not. If we find out something she wants to keep secret, we're dead." "You worry too much, Frances," Liza sighed. They whispered back and forth, then poked their heads out again to check on Leo, only to find a tall figure standing right in front of them. Both women jumped, and Frances let out a small scream. Leo eyed them coolly. "You're Thornton family employees?" he asked. "Why, yes." "Good evening, sir," Frances stammered, bowing her head. Liza, however, was bolder. She met his gaze and said calmly, "Good evening, sir." Leo glanced into the room behind them. It looked like a storage closet. Seeing no one else, he asked, "Your boss told me no one was here tonight. Why are you two still here?" "Oh, there are people, sir. It's just that Miss Thornton specifically told the head butler she wanted the main house empty tonight. We were organizing things in the closet, and we didn't see the group message, so..." Before Frances could finish, Liza clamped a hand over her mouth. "Frances, what are you doing? You're just confessing." Liza hissed in horror. "Oh." Frances realized her mistake and covered her own mouth, her eyes widening in terror. From what he'd overheard, Leo had already pieced it together. He stepped aside, gesturing toward the front door. "It's fine. Just go. She didn't see you too. She's in the shower, so leave now. I won't say anything." "Oh, thank you, sir," Frances said, stunned. She bowed quickly and grabbed Liza's arm, ready to make a run for it. But Liza didn't move. She stood her ground, looked up at Leo, and puffed out her chest. "Sir, you better not hurt her. If you really like her, you should cherish her, and not just MMPH. Frances, what are you doing?" Liza's words were cut off as Frances clamped a hand over her mouth again, her face pale with fright. She forced a smile at Leo. "Sir, please don't listen to her. Liza's young. She hasn't worked here long. We'll go right now." Leo wasn't stupid. He knew exactly what Liza had been about to say. He offered her a faint smile. Don't worry. I'm not what you think. I'm not even staying the night. As soon as she's out of the shower, I'm leaving. Liza's expression shifted to one of suspicion. She wriggled free from Francis's grip. Really? Of course. Liza studied him for a long moment before finally nodding. Then she pursed her lips and muttered, but she's definitely not going to let you leave. Leo's eyebrows shot up. Nonsense. I have my own 2 feet. What you gonna do, tie me up? Oomph. We'll see if you're still saying that later, Liza retorted. She grabbed Francis, and they bolted out the door, terrified of being seen by their boss. Watching them go, Leo glanced up toward the 2nd floor and murmured to himself. So, she sent everyone away on purpose. Looks like this was all for me. A little while later, Isabelle came downstairs, fresh from her shower. She was wearing a loose-fitting pajama top and a pair of very short athletic shorts, her damp hair wrapped in a towel. The icy aura she usually projected had thawed considerably, though the faint trace of cool pride on her face was as captivating as ever. Her long, slender legs were on full display, and the sight of her smooth, pale skin made Leo swallow hard. I'm done, Leo, she said softly. Noticing his flustered gaze, the corners of her lips curled into a subtle, triumphant smirk. She glanced around the living room, then tilted her head. Leo, do you want to take a shower too? You'll sleep better. I'll just shower when I get home. If I shower here, it'll be too late by the time I leave. It's over an hour's drive back to the Maplewood, he said awkwardly. Shower here? Yeah, right. I can see it now. I get out of the shower, and my clothes have mysteriously vanished. Then the guards on duty have all mysteriously forgotten how to drive, and I'm mysteriously stuck here for the night. He had already anticipated her next move. But even with his prediction, Isabelle's reaction caught him off guard. She tilted her head, her beautiful eyes wide with confusion. Go home? How are you going to get home? You said you could have a guard drive me, remember? Leo said, a little stunned. Isabelle simply pointed a delicate finger toward the window. But it's pouring outside, she said softly, and it's dark. It would be dangerous to drive right now. What? Leo whipped his head around. Sure enough, a torrential downpour was raging outside. The mansion's soundproofing was so effective that he hadn't heard a thing. He'd been too distracted by the 2 maids to notice. When did that start? He muttered. Then, the young maid's words echoed in his head. She's definitely not going to let you leave. A suspicion formed, and he shot a look at Isabelle. Did she use her trust fund to seed the clouds while she was in the shower? Is that even a thing? Of course, that was ridiculous. Arranging for artificial rain on such short notice was impossible. More likely, she had checked the weather forecast before they even left campus. Her whole offer to let him stay until she finished her shower was just a stalling tactic, designed to keep him here until the storm hit. Leo looked from the downpour outside to Isabelle, who stood beside him, a serene expression on her face that didn't quite mask the flicker of anticipation in her eyes. Finally, he sighed and nodded. All right, your estate is huge. I assume you have a spare room? I guess I'm not going back tonight. I do. The moment he agreed to stay, Isabelle's eyes lit up, and she nodded eagerly. Yes, he's not leaving. He's sleeping here tonight. But why a guest room? What's wrong with my room? It's not like we haven't slept in the same bed before. Technically true, Leo thought. But I was blackout drunk and completely unconscious. We slept, but we didn't sleep. Before he could process it further, Isabelle grabbed his arm, her face beaming with delight, and pulled him toward the 2nd floor. I'll help you pick a room. Okay. He nodded, a knot of nervousness tightening in his stomach. The massive house, just the 2 of them. Her hand was soft and warm, and those long legs swaying in front of him weren't helping his concentration. They reached the 2nd floor hallway, lined with beautifully decorated rooms. Isabelle excitedly opened door after door, showing him each one. This one has a huge balcony with a great view of the garden. She pointed to another. And this one has a giant bathtub, perfect for soaking. Leo shook his head. I'm not really a bath person. Something simple is fine. Isabelle pouted, thinking. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. She pulled him to a room at the very end of the hall. How about this one? It's simple, but really comfortable. She pushed the door open. Leo stepped inside. The room was Spartan, just a bed, a closet, and a desk. But the bedding looked incredibly soft, and while it lacked the opulence of the other rooms, it had an inviting quality that made him want to collapse onto the bed immediately. Without hesitation, he nodded. This is perfect. Great. This one is. He has good taste, Isabelle thought happily. This was my room for years before I moved to the Maplewood. The sheets and duvet are the ones I used to use. I hope he doesn't mind. Wait, what? Leo's mind screeched to a halt. Okay, hold on. If you're going to put it that way, I'm suddenly not tired anymore. Her original, authentic, Isabelle-scented bed? Isabelle cleared her throat. I'll go get you a washcloth and a loofah. Don't worry about it. I don't use a loofah. Why not? She asked, arching an eyebrow. How else do you lather up the body wash? Leo coughed. There are other ways. What ways? You'll find out if you're a guy in your next life. He held up a hand, cutting her off before she could ask any more questions. Was she serious? What guy used a loofah? Every guy knew you just squeezed the soap onto your personal business. Lathered up in seconds. 10 minutes later, Leo was naked, standing alone in the bathroom. It felt wrong to sleep in someone else's bed without showering first, even if that someone was his girlfriend. Okay, fine, he muttered himself, mainly because this was her bed. He turned on the shower head and quickly made use of his built-in lathering tool. There's a saying, a guy's shower never takes longer than 10 minutes. If it does, there's a 90% chance he's not just showering. Adhering to this principle, Leo was done in record time. He stood in front of the mirror, humming a tune as he dried his hair. It was only when he finished that he realized he'd left his clean clothes on the bed outside. Without a second thought, he opened a bathroom door and stepped out, only to freeze. Isabelle was lying on the bed, engrossed in her phone. She was so focused she hadn't even noticed him. Crap. Leo's mind went blank. She had said she was going to go put on lotion or something, and that she'd meet him downstairs for fruit after a shower. The last thing he expected was to find her back in this room. His heart hammered against his ribs. He tried to retreat silently back into the bathroom, but just as he did, Isabelle shifted, starting to turn her head. Leo's pupils constricted. Moving with lightning speed, he spun around and lunged back into the bathroom, but it was too late. She'd already caught a glimpse of his back, and his two very pale, very bare, but cheeks. Ah! Isabelle shrieked, her face instantly turning scarlet. She slapped a hand over her eyes. Why? Why aren't you wearing any clothes? Her voice was a jumble of shock and embarrassment. Leo, mortified, hid behind the door, poking only his head out. My clothes were on the bed. I forgot to bring them in. I didn't do it on purpose. His heart was still racing. How could he have been so stupid? On the other side of the door, Isabelle's heart was pounding just as hard, the image seared into her brain. She tried to compose herself, but the blush refused to leave her cheeks. After a moment, her voice came from outside. Leo, I put your clothes by the door. Just get dressed. I'm leaving now. Okay. Before he could say more, he heard the frantic patter of her feet as she fled. He took a deep breath, cracked the door open, snatched his clothes, and quickly got dressed. When he emerged, the room was empty. He had just let out a sigh of relief when he heard her inner voice drift up from downstairs. I almost saw him naked. Is that something I'm allowed to see? But is so pale. I kind of want to kick it. Yeah, maybe while wearing stockings. Leo's face went crimson. He collapsed onto the bed, rolling around in sheer mortification. After a long minute, he sat up, his expression grim. Damn it, it's always the stockings. Is that all she thinks about? Stop testing a good man's integrity with this stuff. What man could possibly pass that kind of test? Rain lashed against the windows of the presidential suite in a 5-star hotel downtown. Lester stood respectfully before Sharon Thornton, his customary smile fixed in place. But inside, he was reeling. He thought she was in New York. When had she come to Crestview? Why hadn't he heard anything? Decades of service to the Thorntons had taught him to mask his thoughts, but this was a shock. Sharon gently stroked her pregnant belly. Lester, she said calmly, I hear Isabelle stayed at the estate last night. Yes, Mrs. Thornton, he replied immediately, though he felt his pupils contract. The staff currently at the estate were all his hand-picked people, loyal to him and Isabelle. There was no way news of her stay should have reached Sharon. And yet, the realization sent a chill of fear down his spine. Sharon's reach was far greater than they had ever imagined. Sharon knew of Lester's loyalty to Isabelle. Her comment was a deliberate probe. Seeing the flicker of shock in his eyes, she smiled faintly. I arrived in Crestview yesterday for some business. The hotel was closer than the estate, and with my condition, I didn't want to overdo it with travel. Tomorrow morning, after the rain stops, I'd like you to take me to see her. It's been too long. As her mother, I miss her terribly. Of course, Mrs. Thornton. I understand. Lester agreed without hesitation, betraying no emotion. But his mind was already racing. As soon as I leave, I have to warn her. Mr. Yeager is still at the estate. If she shows up in the morning, it'll be a disaster. Mrs. Thornton, if there's nothing else, I'll be going, he said, preparing his exit. Sharon shook her head, her smile unwavering. Don't go, Lester. It's pouring out, and you're nearing retirement. I wouldn't feel right having you drive in this weather. You can stay here. This is a suite. Besides my assistant's room, there are 2 spares. You're a trusted member of this family. I feel safer with you here. Well, thank you, Mrs. Thornton. Lester hesitated but saw no way out. It's fine. I can just text her. But Sharon's next words made his blood run cold. Lester, you know how it is so many months along in my pregnancy. The radiation from electronics can be so harmful to the baby. Please give your phone to Lucy. She'll keep it safe for you until morning. Lester's heart sank. A bead of cold sweat trickled down his back as Sharon's assistant calmly took his phone. Lester sat on the edge of the hotel bed, a storm of anxiety brewing inside him. He felt like a caged animal. He stood and began pacing the room, finally stopping at the floor-to-ceiling window to watch the rain. His phone was gone. He had no way to contact the outside world. By the time he was driving Sharon to the estate tomorrow, it would be too late to send a message without her noticing. His only chance was tonight. I can't just sit here. If I don't warn them, they'll be caught for sure. He had to find an excuse to leave the suite. The bathroom? No, too obvious. There was a bathroom in his room. It would immediately raise suspicion. I'm hungry. I need to get a late-night snack. That could work. He opened his door, planning to tell Sharon's assistant he was stepping out, but found Sharon herself still in the living room, looking over some documents. She glanced up as he emerged. Lester, still awake? She asked with a placid smile. Yes, Mrs. Thornton. I missed dinner, so I was thinking of going out to grab a bite. He kept his tone casual, not mentioning the phone. He knew if she agreed, she'd have to give it back. She nodded, seemingly fine with it. But then she turned to her assistant. Lucy, order something for Lester. And remember, nothing greasy. Right away, ma'am. Actually, Lester cut in smoothly. At my age, my stomach can be a bit sensitive. I usually need something warm. Don't trouble Ms. Joe. There's a place nearby I go to often. I can just pop down myself. Oh, well, that's no trouble either. Just give Lucy the name of the restaurant, and she can go pick it up for you. The rain is much too heavy. I couldn't rest easy knowing you were out there alone. Her insistence was a clear checkmate. He knew she was a sharp woman. Another refusal would be a red flag. After a moment's thought, he forced a smile. Well, if you're that concerned, I couldn't possibly refuse. I'd be happy to trouble Ms. Joe. The name of the restaurant is... After he gave her the name, Lucy put on her coat and left. Sharon smiled at him, her voice deceptively gentle. Lester, you were due for retirement years ago, but you watched our Isabelle grow up, and you're the only driver she trusts. That's why Richard kept you on. I can't have anything happen to you. After all, Isabelle sees you as family. As her mother, I can't very well go against my own daughter's wishes, can I? Lester's face remained a polite mask. You're too kind, Mrs. Thornton. Go on, get some rest. Lucy will call you when the food arrives. Yes, ma'am. The moment the door to his room clicked shut, the smile vanished from Lester's face. Sharon was toying with him, and she was clearly onto him. He was now certain she had a spy among the staff at the estate. Otherwise, why would she be so determined to stop him from sending a warning? It was obvious. She was setting a trap to catch Isabelle and Leo red-handed. Miss Thornton, I've done everything I can, he thought, his face etched with worry. This woman is too clever. She's left me no way out. He stood at the window, sighing heavily. All he could do now was pray that they would leave the estate before Sharon arrived in the morning. Can I put it on for you? I don't want to. But you have to, Isabelle insisted, puffing out her cheeks. Leo, lying in bed, sighed in defeat. Fine. Put on. I just hate sleeping with a mask. It feels weird. Seeing him finally equipped, she beamed. Her lips parted slightly as she whispered, good night. But that wasn't enough. She leaned down and gave him a soft, lingering kiss. Then, for good measure, she playfully squished his cheeks before leaving, looking completely satisfied with herself. The second the door closed, Leo ripped off the mask and earplugs. His face was burning, his heart thumping wildly in his chest. Holy crap, so the mask and earplugs. That was part of the plan? Being blind and deaf while she kissed me like that. It was thrilling, exhilarating. The sensory deprivation had amplified everything. His heart was still hammering, and he could feel a phantom warmth on his chest where she had pressed against him. Come on, I'm supposed to be sleeping, and you pull a stunt like that? How am I supposed to sleep now? Who gets this worked up at midnight? He hated the feel of the mask and plugs. He went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on his face to calm down. Lying back on the bed, her bed, he could smell the faint, clean scent on the pillowcase, and sleep felt miles away. He lay there for what felt like over an hour, thoughts racing. He thought about the studio, about Isabelle, about everything. Just as he was shifting to find a more comfortable position, He heard it. Creak. A soft noise from the door. In the dead silence of the room, it was as clear as a bell. Leo froze, not daring to move. You gotta be kidding me. A break-in? At the Thornton estate? He squeezed his eyes shut, feigning sleep, his every sense focused on the door. He heard it open, then click softly shut. The room was no longer empty. Someone else was inside. Leo listened to the soft, deliberate footsteps approaching, his muscles tensing. He prepared to spring from the bed and tackle the intruder. But as the shadow drew closer, a familiar scent drifted toward him. He paused, his guard dropping. It was Isabelle's perfume. Oh, he stifled a laugh. So that's why she wanted me to wear the mask and earplugs. She was afraid I'd hear her sneaking in. And making me wear the mask too just made the earplugs seem less suspicious. Clever. He relaxed his body, keeping his breathing slow and even, determined not to give himself away. Isabelle tiptoed to the bedside and stood there for a moment, watching him. Leo cracked his eyes open just enough to see her. In the dim light, a shy smile played on her lips. She slowly climbed onto the bed and lay down beside him. Leo's heart kicked into overdrive. He hadn't expected this. He held his breath, forcing himself to stay still. Sensing no movement from him, Isabelle seemed to relax. She turned on her side, her luminous eyes tracing the lines of his face in the dark. Then, she gently reached out and took his hand. A jolt went through him. He couldn't pretend anymore. Sneaking into my bed in the middle of the night, he said, his voice low. That's not something purely platonic good neighbors do. Exclamation point. Isabelle jumped, her body flinching in surprise. His voice had been too clear, not at all like someone just waking up. She realized instantly that he hadn't been asleep, and he wasn't wearing the earplugs. The room was silent except for the faint patter of rain outside and the frantic, pounding rhythm of her heart. After a few seconds of stunned silence, she finally spoke, her voice a petulant whisper. We're not neighbors. I'm your girlfriend, and I just missed you. Her voice was like music, melting his resolve. He couldn't stay mad. He opened his eyes and turned to face her. In the darkness, he couldn't see her features clearly, but he could feel her gaze lock with his. So, sleep here tonight? He murmured. She hummed in response. I should have just asked. Why did I have to be so sneaky? Her inner voice was a happy shriek. Leo smiled and wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. She tensed for a second before melting into his embrace, resting her head on his chest. They lay there like that, wrapped in the warmth and the sound of each other's heartbeats, no one making a further move. The rain continued its soft rhythm against the glass. After a while, Isabelle shifted, getting comfortable. Her hair brushed against his cheek, tickling him. He looked down at her, his heart swelling with affection. They were lost in the moment, time slipping away unnoticed. Neither of them was sleeping. A long time later, her voice, laced with confusion, broke the silence. Leo, what do you have in your pants? It's poking me. The mood shattered. Leo instantly released her and rolled onto his back, facing away from her. After a few beats of silence, he said gruffly, It's my phone. I forgot to take it out of my pocket. But your phone is right there, next to the pillow. She mumbled, her words hanging in the air. Leo's body went rigid. That's my backup phone, he stammered. You have a backup phone now? Let me see. She started to reach for him. He scooted away, toward the edge of the bed. Don't. We could talk about it later. I took it out. Let's just go to sleep. It's late. Good night. Oh, okay, she said with a pout. She snuggled up against his back, and soon her breathing evened out into a steady rhythm. Facing away from her, Leo's heart was still trying to beat its way out of his chest. He took a few deep breaths, trying to calm down. Once her breathing told him she was asleep, he dared to turn back over. He watched her sleep in the faint light, a smile touching his lips. He gently brushed a stray strand of hair from her cheek. Eventually, the adrenaline faded, replaced by a deep exhaustion. He closed his eyes, the warmth of her body beside him a comforting presence, and finally drifted off to sleep. The next morning, a thick fog hung in the air, a remnant of the previous night's storm. Sharon sat in the back of the car, calmly watching the world go by. Lester was at the wheel. Lester, how much longer? She asked, taking a sip of hot water her assistant had handed her. Another 20 minutes, Mrs. Thornton. I see. You seem to be driving much slower than usual today. Her comment landed like a stone. She noticed. He had been deliberately driving slowly, hoping to buy them more time, hoping that Leo might have already left. Fortunately, he had a ready excuse. Yes, ma'am. Considering your condition, I'm being extra careful. How thoughtful of you. Lester, Sharon said with a knowing smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. As they neared the estate, Lester tried one last time. Ma'am, perhaps I should call Miss Thornton and let her know we're coming? It's a holiday, and it's only 9. She may still be asleep. No need. Let her sleep. I'll wait for her in the living room. Her answer was final. Lester's heart sank. When he pulled into the driveway and saw the look of pure panic on the guards' faces as they recognized Sharon in the back seat, he knew. It was over. Mr. Yeager was still here. Lester brought the car to a stop in front of the main house, where a valet was already waiting. When the valet, along with several groundskeepers in the distance, saw Sharon get out of the car, their faces paled. A quick, sharp glance from Lester was enough to make them school their expressions. The valet hurried over, bowing respectfully. Mrs. Thornton, welcome. She acknowledged coolly. Isabelle is in the main house, I presume? Yes, ma'am. I believe Miss Thornton is still sleeping. I see. Has the cook started on breakfast? The valet hesitated, flicking a nervous glance at Lester before shaking his head. There are no cooks or maids in the main house, ma'am. Before she returned last night, Miss Thornton requested that all staff stay away. She said she wanted some quiet. I see. Well, have the cooks prepare something in one of the other kitchens. My assistant has a list of my dietary restrictions. I have many of them now. Of course, ma'am. I'll inform the head butler immediately. The valet took the keys from Lester and quickly made the call. Supported by her assistant, Lucy, Sharon swept toward the house. Lester followed, a cold sweat breaking out on his neck. The staff's reaction confirmed it. They were both still inside. His worst fears were coming true. The moment they stepped into the foyer, Lester's eyes landed on 2 water glasses and a fruit platter sitting on the coffee table, not yet cleared away. His stomach dropped. Sure enough, Sharon noticed them too. She turned to him. Lester, did Isabelle have a friend over? I wouldn't know, Mrs. Thornton. I wasn't the one who drove her last night. Perhaps. One of her college roommates? It's fall break, after all. It's normal for her to spend time with her friends. Sharon's expression soured. Lester, from the way you say that, one might think I'm some kind of unreasonable mother who forbids her from having friends. No, ma'am, of course not. That's not what I meant at all. I was just. Lester wanted to kick himself. After all these years, how could he make such a clumsy mistake? To his relief, Sharon didn't pursue it. She just gave him a long look before sitting down on the sofa. He's panicking, she thought with a smug internal smile. He almost never makes mistakes like that. Sharon sat patiently, waiting. Lester stood by, his own anxiety mounting. He desperately wanted to find an excuse to run upstairs and warn Isabelle. Just then, footsteps sounded from the second floor. Lester's jaw tightened. At the same moment, Sharon looked up toward the grand staircase. Isabelle appeared at the top, dressed in her pajamas, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. When she saw Sharon and Lester in the living room, a flicker of surprise crossed her face, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. She descended the stairs, her expression returning to its usual cool composure. Mother, she said, her voice devoid of warmth. What are you doing here? Sharon didn't answer right away. She glanced behind Isabelle, and seeing no one, she offered a serene smile. Isabelle, must you still call me that? Is it so difficult to call me Mom? Isabelle just looked at her, then walked to the water cooler and poured a glass of hot water, placing it in front of Sharon. Sharon, long used to this treatment, took a sip. So, did you bring a friend home with you? Yes, Isabelle answered calmly, as if she'd been expecting the question. Oh, is your friend still sleeping? If you don't mind, I'd love to meet them. After all these years, I've never seen you bring a friend home before. I mind. The reply was instant, sharp. The atmosphere in the room grew thick with tension. Sharon said nothing, simply staring at her stepdaughter. Her assistant, Lucy, read the room perfectly. Ma'am, Miss Thornton, I'll just step outside. With a nod from Sharon, Lucy made a swift exit. Lester, though worried, saw the unwavering confidence in Isabelle's eyes and decided to follow suit. Now it was just the two of them. Sharon finally dropped the pretense. A small, cutting smile appeared on her face. It's Leo Yeager, isn't it? Hearing his name, a genuine flash of surprise registered on Isabelle's face before she masked it. Why would you say that? It's quite simple. If it were a normal friend, you would have no reason to hide them from me. And you sent all the staff away. That was so you could be alone with him, wasn't it? You're wrong this time, Mother. Am I? Sharon smiled again. She rose from the sofa and started toward the staircase. Isabelle's composure finally cracked. She shot up, blocking Sharon's path, a hint of panic in her eyes. You can't go up there. TSK. If it's just a friend, why are you so afraid of me seeing them? Isabelle lifted her chin defiantly. You just can't. Fine. Sharon's goal had been to see that panic. not to actually confront Leo. She had one. You're a grown woman now, Isabelle. I should respect your privacy. She turned back. I just came to see you. I've already had the chef start on a meal. Come eat with me. As for your friend upstairs, whether you're worried he'll see me or he's too scared to see me, it doesn't matter. He can come down after I'm gone. With that, she walked out of the main house. Isabelle hesitated for only a moment before quickly getting dressed and joining her stepmother for the meal. Throughout breakfast, Sharon didn't mention Leo again. As soon as they were done, she had Lucy drive her away from the estate, her mission of intimidation seemingly complete. As Sharon's car disappeared down the drive, Lester rushed to Isabelle's side, his face full of guilt. I'm so sorry, Miss Thornton. She called me over last night, and her assistant took my phone, claiming the radiation would affect the baby. There was no way for me to warn you. And I don't know how she found out you were here. From her attitude, it seems she already knew Mr. Yeager was here too. We may have to replace the entire staff again. Isabelle listened, her expression unreadable. Only when the car was completely out of sight did a smile touch her lips. It's all right, Lester, she said. I was the one who leaked the information to her. This was all part of the plan. What? Lester stared at her, utterly dumbfounded. When the words, part of the plan, finally registered, Lester was speechless. After a long moment, he managed to stammer, Miss Thornton, so you mean, you knew she was coming back to Crestview? And you deliberately let her find out you brought Mr. Yeager to the estate? Yes. Then just now in front of her. I was acting. Lester let out a bitter laugh. Well, that's a relief. As long as it was intentional. But why didn't you tell me? I could have been better prepared. There was nothing to prepare for her. I intentionally kept you in the dark because I needed her to see your genuine reaction. She's too smart, Lester. Any attempt to hide your feelings would have been seen through. It was better for her to see the truth. Lester's eyes widened again. Everything really had been part of her plan. The staff is fine, Isabelle continued, her voice calm. This proved there are no spies among them. If there were, she wouldn't have left so easily. She thinks she's won, that she's successfully intimidated me. The smarter she is, the more arrogant she becomes. She still thinks I'm the same little girl she can control. Her expression hardened. But we need to speed things up, Lester. She's going to use this pregnancy to solidify her position in the company. My father will let her get away with anything right now. At the mention of her father, Lester's face fell. Richard Thornton had once been such a force. Now he was completely wrapped around that woman's finger. Understand, Miss Thornton. I'll get right on it, he said. By the way, is Mr. Yeager really still upstairs? At the mention of Leo, a genuine, warm smile finally broke through Isabelle's cool facade. No, he left early this morning. He had his own work to do. I see. Lester paused, then said with a sigh, You're becoming more and more like your mother every day. If only she had been as decisive as you are. The name of her late mother, Catherine Liu, brought a wave of sadness to Isabelle's eyes. She looked up at the sky, her voice growing thick. My mother wasn't indecisive, she said softly. She just loved my father too much. Leo had left the Thornton estate at 8 a.m. sharp. Part of him had wanted to linger, to savor the morning after their first real night together. Even though they hadn't done anything, just holding her while they slept had been more than enough. He was still replaying it in his mind when he walked back into Starfall Studios. Ruby Yu, Sean Xiao, and Mark Zhang were already there, along with the new hires from the day before. They all greeted him as he came in. The post-rain air was cool, and even Ruby, who usually dressed for summer, was wearing long pants and a jacket. Morning, Leo, she said, beaming. I assume Sean called you last night about the video blowing up? Yeah, he was the first to tell me. Well, guess how many likes it has now? How many? 780,000. And it's broken 10 million views. Leo hissed through his teeth. Even though he'd been prepared for a big number, hearing it out loud was still a shock. 10 million views. Just a few weeks ago, that was a pipe dream for everyone at Starfall. Their initial goal had been to hit 2 million on a single video. Now this. Before Leo could comment, Sean jumped in. I checked our messages this morning. We got inquiries from major brands and ad agencies wanting to partner with us. I'm putting together a list so we can go over it and decide who to work with. He snapped his fingers. Oh, and I spoke with Mr. Warren this morning. When he heard how well the video with his ad did, he had his finance department wire the money immediately. Not only the final payment, but an $80,000 performance bonus. And he said there's more to come as the views keep climbing. So, with this new capital, I was thinking we should move forward with the plan to launch our second and third channels right away. Leo didn't disagree. He stroked his chin, thinking for a moment. Absolutely. But first, we need a bigger space. With all the new people, we're already packed in here. It's hard to get any real work done. Sean nodded in agreement. He was about to say more when his phone buzzed. Sorry guys, 1 second, he said, stepping outside to take the call. Hello. Sean, is now a bad time? The voice on the other end was Sharon Thornton's. While Sean was on the phone, the rest of the team got to work. With more people and a viral hit on their hands, Leo's workload had increased dramatically. Starfall Studios couldn't be a one-hit wonder, so he immediately started brainstorming ideas for the next 2 channels. The safe bet was to stick with what worked, more short-form narrative videos. With their experience, they could easily get another channel to several 100,000 followers in a month. But Leo's ambition was bigger than that. After careful consideration, he decided the second channel should continue with narrative content, but the third should venture into a completely new vertical. When he pitched this to Sean later, he was immediately shut down. Leo, I think we need to play it safe, Sean said, his expression serious. Both new channels should stick to the narrative format. We can't get cocky. The success of our first channel was half solid planning and half pure luck. We should have at least 3 successful channels in the same niche before we even think about expanding. By then, we'll have the capital and the experience to afford a failure. If we try a new vertical now and it flops, we're right back where we started. Sean's logic was sound, but Leo couldn't agree. I know you're worried about the overhead now that we're bigger, Leo countered, frowning. But in this industry, trends change overnight. What's viral this week is old news next week. You're right that luck was a factor, but I don't think it was 50%. We found the right angle from the start. If we do the same deep dive research into a new vertical, we can hit it big again. He leaned forward, pressing his point. The internet moves too fast. If we don't jump on this opportunity now, by the time we feel stable, it'll be too late. The new verticals will be saturated. The risk of waiting is greater than the risk of failing. Getting the studio to what you'd call a stable point will take at least 3 months at our current pace. In the real world, that's nothing. On the internet, it's an eternity. What you're saying isn't wrong, Sean replied, his tone firm. But as the head of the studio, my first priority is long-term stability, not taking massive risks on every single move. Sean, I get that, but I think we're not discussing this further, Leo. That's my final decision. Once we have 3 profitable channels, we can talk about new verticals. Sean's unequivocal shutdown silenced Leo. He stared at his friend, his jaw tight. Technically, the investment he and Kevin had made gave him the largest share in the company. He had veto power, a clause in their contract Sean seemed to be forgetting. He could force a vote right now. But Sean was the founder. Out of respect, Leo held his tongue. After a long moment, he forced a smile. Okay, Sean, I still stand by my idea, and you stand by yours. How about this? We both do our own market research over the fall break. We can bring it up again after the holiday. Maybe by then, one of us will have changed our mind. What do you say? Fine, Sean agreed with a nod. Leo spent the rest of the day buried in research, leaving the studio just as evening fell. On his way out, he paused. Hey, Sean, we really need to get moving on finding a new office. We'll probably be hiring again right after the break. Yeah, it's on my list. I'll start looking tomorrow. Good. As Leo walked out of the Fletcher Arts and Design building, he glanced back. He had played nice today, respecting Sean's role as the founder. But he wasn't a pushover. If Sean was still this stubborn after the holiday, then sorry man, Leo thought. A contract is a contract, and my veto power is non-negotiable. His goal was to make the studio grow, and to do it as fast and as aggressively as possible. The fall break flew by. Leo spent most days at the studio, then went home in the evenings to have dinner with Isabelle and take Buttercream for a walk. Though, more often than not, their walks would end with them finding a secluded corner to engage in a bit of lip service, leaving Buttercream to bark impatiently. I may not be human, the dog seemed to say, but you two are the real animals. On October 7th, the last day of the break, Leo woke up to a text message from his bank that instantly banished all sleepiness. Chase Bank, a direct deposit of $75,000 was made to your account ending in 6011 on October 7th at 7:12 a.m. Your new balance is $86,371.10. He grinned, took a screenshot, and immediately sent it to the dorm group chat with a message. Ah, just another humble day with a $75,000 deposit. Right, at Rex Gao. The reply came almost instantly. Rex Gao, voice message, 1 o'clock. Just seeing the full 60-second runtime made Leo's grin widen. Hook, line, and sinker. He didn't bother listening to the message, which he knew would contain a record-breaking number of curse words per second. Instead, he got up to brush his teeth. The $75,000 was his cut from the studio's latest earnings. It was more than Sean, Quinn, Don, and Ruby had made combined, a perk of being the primary investor. Before he could even finish brushing, his phone rang. It was Kevin. Leo, it's an emergency. What's wrong? Leo joked. Did Clara's dad catch you trying to kiss her and threaten to break your legs? Dude, this is serious. Kevin's voice was frantic. I just got a text from my bank. Over 20 grand just showed up in my account out of nowhere. I think I'm being targeted by money launderers. Leo, should I call the cops? I'm not touching a cent of it. I don't want the FBI kicking down my door. Clara and I just got together. As Kevin's paranoid rambling escalated, Leo's face darkened. He was just trying to mess with him, but his friend had spun a whole federal case out of it. Dude, chill out, Leo interrupted. It's your payout from a studio, not cartel money. Oh, okay, so it's from a stud. Wait, what did you say? I only put in 10 grand. How'd I get this much back already? Kevin shouted into the phone. His reaction was exactly what Leo had expected. Just a few months ago, they were high school kids stressing over 20 bucks. Now they were seeing 5-figure deposits. The whiplash was intense. Leo cleared his throat. Relax, man. Try to have some class. I got 75. Holy SH. A string of curses followed, and in the background, Leo could faintly hear Clara's worried voice. Kevin? What's wrong? You're shaking. I'm fine. Leo smiled to himself and hung up. Kevin and Clara were probably on the train back to Crestview. He looked at his own bank balance. The initial thrill was already fading. Compared to what Isabelle had, it was pocket change. Still, it was a start. He was no longer a mayfly trying to shake a giant tree. I should buy a car, he thought. It would make getting to the studio and to meetings a lot easier. The idea took root and refused to let go. It was a cliche, but it was true. The first thing a guy wants to do with his first real money is take care of his parents and buy a car. He never thought he'd be that guy, but here he was. He got dressed and walked over to Isabelle's apartment, ringing the bell. The door opened to reveal a sleepy-eyed Isabelle in her pajamas, who immediately burrowed into his chest like a cat. He held her for a moment, then gently squeezed her cheeks. Go get ready. You're coming with me to buy something. Okay, she mumbled, shuffling toward the bathroom in her bunny slippers. An hour later, Lester was driving them to a Volkswagen dealership. Isabelle, looking stunning even with just a touch of makeup, kept glancing at Leo, her lips parted as if she wanted to say something but couldn't. If he needs a car, I could just have Lester bring one over from the estate. No, he wouldn't like that. He never wants to use my money. Leo heard her thoughts and smiled. It wasn't that he was against her spending money on him. A relationship where you kept a strict tally of who paid for what was doomed. But this was different. This was his chance to show her, without saying a word, that his hard work was paying off. For a guy, showing his girlfriend his success was just as important as getting a nod of approval from his father. Lester, who didn't know the details of Starfall Studios, ventured a careful question. Mr. Yeager, have you started a business at the university? Something like that, Leo said, and since he considered Lester a friend, he gave him the rundown. By the time they pulled up to the dealership, Lester's expression was one of genuine shock. As he watched Leo and Isabelle walk into the showroom, a look of relief washed over his face. I was so worried about the gap between them, he thought. It seems I worried for nothing. Inside, Leo scanned the floor and walked straight toward a sleek Volkswagen CC. A salesman approached. Good morning, sir, ma'am. Let me tell you about. No need, Leo cut him off. If you have a CC in stock, I'll take it. Let's sign the papers now. I'm in a hurry. He didn't want to waste time haggling over a few $1,000s. It wasn't that he was suddenly above that kind of money. It was that he had something far more important to do. Isabelle tugged on his sleeve, her brow furrowed with concern. Do you have somewhere urgent to be? Yeah, he said, turning to her, his expression serious. I'm taking you to meet my parents. I'm taking you to see my parents. Leo said it so calmly that Isabelle Thornton's first reaction was a flicker of confusion. Then her eyes went wide, her gaze locking on him in disbelief. She knew, of course, that Leo's parents had passed away when he was very young. Since she'd moved into the Maplewood and they'd grown close, he'd almost never mentioned them. Being sensitive to the topic, Isabelle never brought it up. She never imagined he would be the one to suggest it. Not now, at least. But he had. He's taking me to meet his mom and dad. But I don't think what I'm wearing is right for meeting them. Should I tell them I need to change? What if they don't like me? I'm not prepared at all. Hearing the frantic symphony in her mind, Leo couldn't help but smile. It was clear his sudden proposal had sent her into a tailspin. He gave her a reassuring look. Hey, don't be nervous, he said gently. It's not like we can meet them face to face anymore. I just want to take you to the cemetery where they're buried. I've always thought that when I finally found the girl I love most, I'd bring her to meet them. His words eased some of her tension, but a different emotion swelled in its place. She looked at him, her expression a complex mix of feelings, then bit her lip and lowered her gaze. Okay, in that case is what I'm wearing. Appropriate for meeting them? Of course. Anything you wear is fine. Don't be so formal, he said with an easy smile, taking her hand. Just then, the salesman who had been approaching them, Dennis Kuhn, finally snapped out of the days Leo's "if you have one in stock, I'll sign for it now" had put him in. Dennis looked at the young couple with a complicated expression, hesitating for a moment. He'd been selling cars for 10 years and prided himself on being able to size people up. The two kids in front of him had an air of confidence, especially the girl, but there was an unmistakable youthfulness about them, the kind that any seasoned professional could spot a mile away. They were clearly students. Didn't even look at the car, just wanted to sign the papers and drive it off the lot. How rich did their family have to be for them to be that brazen? And if they were that loaded, wouldn't they be starting with a BMW or an Audi, at least? Why a Volkswagen CC? Still, Dennis had his professional ethics. He put on a polite smile. Sir, why don't I tell you a little about the car first? This model is... No need. I already researched it before coming. I know all the specs, and you have a sticker price listed. Just write up all the miscellaneous fees on the invoice. As long as it's not outrageous, I'll sign it. Leo cut him off with a wave of his hand. Seeing that the kid had zero interest in hearing his pitch, Dennis frowned, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. Sir, with all due respect, this car is going to run you around $40,000 out the door. That's not a small sum. I really suggest we discuss the details. Leo let out an exasperated sigh. This guy was relentless. I already told you I'll sign and pay on the spot. How hard is that to understand? I'm handing you a commission on a silver platter. Why do you have to make it complicated? Are you trying to force me into some cheesy soap opera scene? The one where the snooty salesman looks down on the secret heir, who then slaps him in the face with a black card. Just then, a female colleague rushed over from the entrance. She gave Leo and Isabelle an apologetic smile before cupping her hand to Dennis's ear and whispering, Dennis, just get him the paperwork. See that Maybach parked outside? They just got out of it. I think they have a chauffeur. Dennis's expression changed in a heartbeat. Damn it, they're actually rich kids. He glanced at the Maybach parked by the curb, then quickly turned back to Leo with a sycophantic grin. Ahem, my apologies, sir. I was being too cautious. I'll go with the paperwork right now. And as it happens, we do have this model in stock. You could drive it off the lot as soon as the payment clears. Okay, good. Be quick about it, Leo said with a faint nod. Dennis spun on his heel and hurried to his office. After he left, Leo shot a grateful look at the female sales associate. She smiled politely before turning to help another customer. Leo muttered under his breath, Man, that was a close call. I almost had to do the whole smirking underdog routine. What does that mean? Why would you have to smirk? Isabelle tilted her head, her eyes wide with confusion. Leo cleared his throat, rubbing his nose awkwardly. It's nothing. Lester would probably get it. After all, he thought, Lester is a connoisseur of those cheesy undercover CEO novels. He'd know the trope inside and out. Soon, Dennis returned with the paperwork. Leo glanced over it. The final price was close to what he'd found online. The service fees were a little steep, but he couldn't be bothered to argue. He signed the documents and followed Dennis to pay with his card. Another half hour for insurance and a temporary license plate, and by 11 o'clock, Leo was pulling the new car out of the dealership's garage. As soon as he emerged, Lester got out of the Maybach, his face beaming. Congratulations, Mr. Yeager. So young and already paying in full for a $40,000 car. You truly have a promising future. Ahem, Lester, come on. You drive a car that costs 4 times as much. This is nothing, Leo said, embarrassed. Lester chuckled. You've got it wrong, Mr. Yeager. This car belongs to the missus. I'm just a driver. If we're talking about my own cars, well, I don't even have one. Uh-huh. Leo's mouth twitched. You're too modest, Lester. He knew for a fact that Isabelle's family paid him a hefty salary, and with the bonuses Isabelle gave him for helping her fool Leo, he probably had a small fortune stashed away. Buying a car would be nothing. If he wanted to, Lester could probably pay cash for something in the 6-figure range. Just then, Lester made a helpful suggestion. Mr. Yeager, a new car's tires need to be broken in. How about you drive Miss Isabelle in the Maybach? I'll take care of that for you. No. Isabelle shot back before Leo could even respond. She glared at Lester, her cheeks puffed out. It's his new car, and I'm riding it first. Lester is a bad influence. With that, she opened the passenger door, instinctively smoothed down her pants, and slid into the seat with a practice motion, but first, then legs. As her perfectly round, pert rear faced him for a moment, Leo couldn't help but swallow hard. My apologies, miss. Lester was taken aback for a second, but hearing Isabelle's possessive declaration, he just chuckled and shook his head. Leo smiled at her adorable, pouty expression. He leaned across her to buckle her seatbelt, then looked at Lester standing outside. You can head back, Lester. I'll drive Isabelle from here. Don't worry about my driving. Of course, Mr. Yeager. Please take good care of her. And if I may, I should remind you both that you probably need to be back at the university tonight, just so you don't lose track of time. Leo nodded. I know. I'm just taking her to see my parents, then we'll head back to campus. Your parents? Lester froze. He stood motionless for several seconds, the perpetual smile gone from his face as he stared blankly at Leo. His reaction was so stark that it caught Leo off guard. Lester? What's wrong? I'm fine. Leo's voice snapped him out of it. When Lester came to, his eyes were suddenly moist. He had been the one to compile all of Leo's background information for Isabelle. Besides Isabelle herself, Lester knew Leo's situation better than anyone. He knew exactly what had happened to his parents. For Leo to be willing to take Isabelle to see them, it meant he had truly, from the bottom of his heart, decided she was the one. He wouldn't be taking her to meet his late parents otherwise. Lester pulled off his driving gloves and wiped the corner of his eye with the back of his hand. Though a smile returned to his face, his voice was thick and raspy. That's wonderful. Just wonderful. Mr. Yeager, for you to take my young miss to meet your mother and father. You truly hold her dear to your heart. This is a blessing for her. His voice broke. If her own mother could know about this, she would be so happy. Seeing the old man wiping away tears on the side of the road, Isabelle was touched. The cool mask she usually wore softened, and she pouted playfully. Lester, don't be so dramatic. If you keep this up, I'll have to dock your pay. Dock away. To see you being treated with such sincerity by Mr. Yeager, this old man is truly happy. Lester wiped his eyes again. All right, you two should get going. I won't hold you up. Okay. Leo nodded, his gaze on Lester growing complex. He'd known for a while that, emotionally speaking, Lester was more of a father to Isabelle than her actual father was. Only someone who truly loved and cherished her would be this genuinely happy for her. Soon, Leo was driving, with Isabelle in the passenger seat, toward the cemetery on the outskirts of the city. The last time he'd been here was after he and Kevin had returned from the Black Fork region. He had told his parents he'd been accepted to the University of Crestview and that he'd finally gotten his survivor benefits back from his Aunt Brenda's family. As they drove, Isabelle grew increasingly nervous. She kept glancing at Leo, searching his expression for some reassurance. Sensing her anxiety, he reached over and gently squeezed her hand. Don't be nervous. She nodded slightly, though the feeling wouldn't completely subside. She started picturing Leo's parents in her mind, worrying if she would make a good impression. Leo gazed at the passing scenery, a faint smile on his lips. It's a good thing they were buried here in Crestview. When I first moved here for school, even though I was used to being alone, I'd still get lonely. Scared sometimes. Back then, I'd often ride my bike for hours in the middle of the night, just to come here and talk to them for a while before riding all the way back. He paused, his voice soft. When I was little, I was terrified of ghosts. I thought cemeteries were creepy, filled with all sorts of scary, invisible things. But after my parents passed away, I never felt that way again. I realized that every ghost I was afraid of as a child was just like my mom and dad, someone that another person was desperately missing, someone they could never see again. The closer they got to the cemetery, the quieter their surroundings became. Isabelle looked at the boy's serene face as he spoke so matter-of-factly, and an inexplicable sorrow washed over her. For a long time, she had considered herself unlucky. Of all the people in the world, why did her mother have to die? But then she learned about Leo, who had lost not just his mother, but his father, too, at such a young age, only to be taken in by a family of vampires like his aunt. Suddenly, Isabelle felt that compared to Leo's tragedy and solitude, she was fortunate to still have her father, Lester, and Landon. But Leo, he had always been alone. Thinking this, her eyes began to well up. I'm so sorry, Leo. If only I'd found you sooner. Hearing her thoughts, Leo's eyelids trembled, and a sting pricked his nose. He suddenly understood a line he'd once read in a book. You don't have to do anything. Just stand there and I'll love you. It was true. He hadn't really done anything. He had just existed, and Isabelle already loved him so much. Love, he realized, was often feeling indebted. Before long, the car was parked at the cemetery gate. Leo and Isabelle got out and walked hand in hand through the entrance. They followed a small path, searching for his parents' headstone. They found it in a quiet corner. Leo stood silently before the stone, gazing at the photos of his parents, his eyes filled with longing and reverence. He opened his mouth, his voice suddenly hoarse. "Mom, Dad, I came to see you. This is Isabelle Thornton. She's my girlfriend, the girl I love most in the world. I wanted you to meet her." Isabelle stood beside Leo, looking at the photos on the headstone. "Hello, sir." "Ma'am," she said softly. "I'm Leo's girlfriend, Isabelle Thornton." Though she couldn't see them, and they couldn't answer, Isabelle was still incredibly nervous. She clutched the hem of her jacket, and her usually cool, clear voice trembled slightly. After her greeting, she bowed her head respectfully and placed the bouquet of flowers they bought on the way at the base of the gravestone. Noticing her tension, Leo squeezed her hand tightly. He took a slow breath, shaking off the weight of the moment and adopting a lighter tone. "Mom, Dad, it's been a while. The last time I was here was to tell you I got into UFC. College is busy, you know? Not like high school where you're stuck on campus, but still. Anyway, I used the survivor benefits to invest in a startup studio, and I've been busy with that since school started. You'd probably worry I get scammed or lose the money, but the good news is the studio is thriving. This morning, I got my first dividend payout, $75,000. He gestured back toward the entrance. "I used some of it to buy a new car. No more bikes or buses to get here. It's that white Volkswagen over there. License plate ends in 85. You can see it from here. Don't worry about me. Ever since I left Brenda's house, I've been doing great. You don't have to worry about me anymore." Leo kept his voice as even as he could, always trying to sound cheerful for them. It had always been this way. Even if he couldn't see them, he only ever shared the good news. Even if he'd come to them hurting, he would bury the pain and only speak of easy things. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, feeling like a soft caress on his cheek. Isabelle watched him, her heart aching. She could feel the profound love and attachment he had for his parents, and she finally fully understood the strength he had carried for so long. She bit her lip, turned to him, and said softly, "Leo, can I have a moment alone with him?" "Huh." He looked at her, saw the earnest plea in her eyes, and nodded. "Sure. I'll wait for you outside. Mom, Dad, I'll let Isabelle chat with you for a bit. I'll be back in a few days." With that, Leo turned and walked toward the cemetery entrance. He was intensely curious about what she could possibly want to say to them, but out of respect, he didn't hide and eavesdrop. As he neared the gate, he glanced back one last time. It was that momentary pause that made him miss the woman who had just appeared around the corner. He walked right into her. Oof, Leo was solid, and the unexpected impact knocked a pained grunt out of her. He stumbled back a few steps and quickly turned to see who he'd hit. A woman about Isabelle's height, though she was wearing heels, stood before him. A pair of large sunglasses covered most of her face, leaving only a small, elegant mouth painted with dark lipstick. Her style was reminiscent of Ruby Yu, a long coffee-colored trench coat that fell nearly to her calves, with a form-fitting t-shirt underneath. The ends of her shoulder-length hair were tucked into the coat, giving her an air of sexy, mysterious confidence. She was frowning, rubbing her chest where he'd collided with her. It clearly hurt. After a brief moment of being stunned by her presence, Leo snapped back to reality. He immediately put on a sincere, apologetic expression. "I'm so sorry. I wasn't looking where I was going. Are you okay? Should I take you to a hospital to get checked out?" "I'm fine." The woman bit her lip and shook her head, indicating she wasn't as fragile as he thought. She took off her sunglasses and inspected them carefully. Finding no damage, she let out a sigh of relief. A charming smile spread across her face as she raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. Leo was once again stunned by her beauty. He was certain she was in the same league as Isabelle and Nina, P9.She's girlfriend. Most surprisingly, she looked familiar. He quickly searched his memory, and his eyebrows shot up in disbelief. "You're Ms. Shun. Shun." He racked his brain, but her full name escaped him. Seeing that he seemed to recognize her, the woman looked a little surprised. "You know me?" Not personally. I've just seen you in some news articles about the tea brand, Chatterty." "Oh." Her expression was neutral until she heard him say Chatterty. Then it changed. She smiled. "I see. Well, I'm fine. Good thing these sunglasses didn't break. I might have actually gotten angry. They were the only gift the man I love most ever gave me." She slid the sunglasses back on, tucked her hands into her coat pockets, and continued walking into the cemetery. But after a few steps, she paused, turned back, and said with a grin, "By the way, you have a good memory, handsome. My last name is Shun. Selena Shun." "Oh, right," Leo said dumbly, watching as she disappeared from sight. He stood there for a moment, his thoughts drifting. He had a feeling that this Selena Shun had a lot of stories behind her, Her connection to Chatterjee and her unique aura made him curious about her past. But what really stuck with him was the missed opportunity to get her contact information. All the articles about her were related to the brand. She was clearly a major player. If he could connect the studio with a heavyweight like her, they could land a huge investment. Forget running into rich heiresses, he grumbled to himself. When do I get to save some low-key billionaire grandpa and fast-track my life by a few decades? Shaking his head, he walked out of the cemetery. After waiting for about 10 minutes, he finally saw Isabelle emerge. Her eyes held a hint of melancholy, but also a new warmth and resolve. Leo walked up to her, a smile playing on his lips. "So, what did you and my parents talk about?" Isabelle lifted her chin, her cool expression returning. "Secret. I told them," she thought, "that from now on, I'm here. They don't have to worry about their little Leo anymore." After leaving the cemetery, Leo and Isabelle had planned to go straight back to campus. But Isabelle suddenly remembered her clothes were still at the Maplewood, so they had to go back and get them. Leo took her to lunch, and they browsed a few shops at the mall before heading back to the apartment complex. At 6 in the evening, they walked back into apartment 1003. The moment the door opened, Buttercream and Oscar swarmed them. Buttercream, in particular, was ecstatic, running in happy circles around their legs, her tail wagging furiously. Watching the dog, Isabelle sighed. "It's a shame we can't have pets in the dorms. I wish we could bring Buttercream and Oscar to school with us." "Yeah, it would be tough. If we left them alone in the room when we had class, they'd probably tear the place apart. Though, we could probably keep them at the studio. And on second thought, that's not a good idea either." Leo trailed off, immediately dismissing the thought. But Isabelle tilted her head, asking innocently, "Why not?" "Well, it's a workplace. And besides, they only know me. I'm afraid they wouldn't adjust well if I brought them there," Leo said, rubbing his nose as he fabricated an excuse. Oh, Isabelle didn't press the issue. She wheeled her small suitcase into her bedroom and started packing the clothes she needed to take back to campus. Leo crouched in the living room, playing with Oscar and Buttercream for a bit, when it suddenly occurred to him that as a good boyfriend he should probably go help. He stood up and walked toward her bedroom. He was just at the doorway when he saw her kneeling on the floor, neatly folding clothes from a pile and placing them in her suitcase. He was about to offer his help when he saw her pick up a pair of small, pink panties and place them delicately inside. Then came a blue pair, a white one, a gray one. Hiss! Leo sucked in a sharp breath and quietly tiptoed back to the living room. Some jobs, he decided, were best left unhelped. About 10 minutes later, Isabelle emerged from her room, having finished packing. She pulled the small suitcase behind her and immediately noticed Leo on the couch. His face beat red. "What's wrong with you? Your face is so red." It's just a little hot in here." Hearing this, Isabelle glanced quizzically at the thermostat on the wall. "But it's only 65 degrees. That's not hot." Young people run hot, you know." "Ha ha ha." Leo laughed awkwardly. The image of the colorful assortment of underwear he'd just witnessed flashed his mind, and his face burned even hotter. To change the subject, he quickly stood up. "Ahem, all packed? We should probably head back to school." "Wait a second." Isabelle let go of her suitcase and scurried over to the balcony. She pulled all the curtains shut, then dashed back to Leo's side. Before he could ask what she was doing, she reached for the light switch on the wall. Click! With the curtains drawn and the lights off, the entire apartment plunged into pitch-black darkness. Buttercream and Oscar, caught by surprise, started yelping in confusion. Leo was about to ask why she'd suddenly killed the lights when he felt a rush of warm, fragrant air. An instant later, a cool, soft pressure met his lips. It was Isabelle. Leo froze for a second before his brain caught up. "Oh, so we're playing this game. Okay, very okay." Realizing what was happening, he wrapped his arms around her waist. "Very okay." Realizing what was happening, he wrapped his arms around her waist. She was clearly standing on her tiptoes to kiss him. In the darkness, their kiss deepened, growing more heated and passionate. Leo shifted from being the receiver to the aggressor. Time seemed to stand still, the only sounds their racing heartbeats and intertwined breaths. The complete lack of vision seemed to heighten their other senses, making them both sink deeper into the thrilling intimacy of the moment. Isabelle, who had been the bold initiator, quickly melted in his arms. Her body went soft, her legs beginning to feel weak as she trembled against him. She was like a cream puff on the verge of dissolving. She whimpered, struggling for air. The sound sent a jolt through Leo, who was already on edge. He pressed forward, and Isabelle, who could barely stand, felt her legs give out completely. She started to fall backward. Caught off guard, Leo was pulled down with her, her arms still wrapped around his neck. Luckily, the sofa was right behind her, and they tumbled onto it together, Leo landing on top of her in a very compromising position. Oof! Isabelle let out a soft cry as Leo felt the distinct impact of two soft mounds against his chest. The pet's barking gradually subsided, as if they too sensed the change in atmosphere. After what felt like an eternity, a breathless Leo finally pulled away from her lips. He took a few gasping breaths, ready to dive back in, when a small, plaintive voice floated up from the darkness. Leo, your backup phone is poking me again. Ahem, it's a little stuffy in here, huh? Leo was driving, his expression a mask of pure awkwardness. In the passenger seat, Isabelle's cheeks were flushed a deep crimson. She kept her head down, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her shirt at her lap. Back in the apartment, they had been on the verge of losing control on the sofa, Leo's hands starting to wander. It was a phone call from Rex Gao that had shattered the moment. Yo, Leo, where are you? It's getting late. The RA is doing room checks at 10 tonight. I'll be back before 10, Leo had managed to reply, his voice raspy, before scrambling off of Isabelle. And so they'd left apartment 1003. They'd been in the car for several miles without exchanging a single word. Leo rolled down the window, and a blast of cool night air finally started to clear his head. He pursed his lips, and, when he thought Isabelle wasn't looking, subtly adjusted himself. He drove them back to Crestview Polytechnic, pulling up in front of the women's dorms. He cleared his throat, breaking the thick silence. Hemel, we're here. Oh, Isabelle responded woodenly. She unbuckled her seatbelt and opened the door. After Leo retrieved her suitcase from the trunk, she hesitated, biting her lip. I'm going up. Yeah, you should go. That wasn't what Leo wanted to say, but every time he thought of her line from the sofa, your backup phone is poking me again, his face felt like it was on fire. He thought she was clueless. Now it seemed she knew everything. Okay, Isabelle mumbled, brushing a stray hair from her forehead before grabbing her suitcase and heading inside. Looking at her cool, composed demeanor, no one would ever guess that just an hour ago, she'd been kissed until her legs gave out. Leo stood by the car, watching her go with a dopey smile before getting back in and heading for the campus parking garage. He did a full lap, but couldn't find a single open non-faculty spot. Damn, what do you expect from a top-tier school? The place is crawling with rich kids, he muttered, staring at the rows of occupied spaces. Parking off campus meant paying a fortune every day, not to mention the risk of getting his new car scratched. The garage was the safest and cheapest option. His eyes eventually landed on a familiar Mercedes C-Class belonging to Rex Gao. He immediately pulled out his phone. Yo, Leo, you still not back? Rex sounded like he was in the middle of the game. Leo could hear the frantic clicking of a keyboard in the background. Leo cleared his throat, making sure his voice was steady. I'm on my way now. Probably get there in about half an hour. Oh, so what's up? I was just passing by the Crestview Galleria, and there's a huge crowd of really cute girls there. I think they're doing some kind of social outreach thing. If you participate, you get to interact with them. Hands on. If I wasn't with Isabelle, I'd be all over it. Who wouldn't be? What? Are you serious? The promise of hands-on interaction with cute girls made Rex's voice crack with excitement. Totally serious, Leo assured him. It's nothing but girls. Holy crap. Leo, you're a true bro. I'm heading over right now. Rex hung up. Leo drove his car to the aisle behind Rex's spot. Sure enough, a few moments later, Rex came tearing down the stairwell, his hair hastily styled. He jumped in his Mercedes and peeled out of the garage. Leo saw his chance and perfectly maneuvered his car into the newly vacant spot. Phew, perfect, he said with a satisfied smile, clapping his hands together before heading toward the cafeteria. He hadn't technically lied. When he and Isabelle drove past the Galleria earlier, he had indeed seen a large group of people involved in a community event, and they were, in fact, all women. A large group of very, very senior women. After grabbing a bite to eat, Leo whistled his way back to the dorm. When he pushed open the door to room 415, he found Felix Fong and Ned Nyo on the balcony, smoking. Felix was holding a pair of binoculars, peering intently toward the athletic fields. Felix, Ned, what are you guys looking at? You even broke out the binoculars. Hearing Leo's voice, Felix lowered the binoculars, pushed up his glasses, and gave him a sly grin. Some things are better seen than described. Come take a look for yourself. Ned just nodded enthusiastically beside him, a goofy smile plastered on his face. Confused, Leo took the binoculars from Felix and aimed them in the same direction. One look, and he was frozen in place. The The binoculars offered a perfect view of an open area next to the track. On the field, a group of girls in cheerleading uniforms were practicing a routine. Each one was impressively endowed, and when they jumped, well, holy shit, all these cheerleaders. We have a big game coming up or something? Leo felt a warmth in his nostrils and quickly lowered the binoculars. Felix chuckled. Yeah, we're playing Channing University next week. The soccer club wanted to add some flair to the game, so they recruited a bunch of girls from the dance club. Old Rex found out about it from a group chat he's lurking in and spent a fortune on those binoculars. They were great. Damn, that's our Rex, Leo said with a sigh. Just then, the dorm room door slammed open. A dejected Rex Gao stomped in. When he saw Leo was back, his eyebrows shot up in anger. The hell, Leo, you lied to me. There weren't any cute girls at the Galleria. It was a bunch of 60-year-old grannies. Leo shrugged. So what? A woman is 18 forever, don't you know? Is it wrong for me to call them young ladies? And tell me, wasn't it just like I said? You participated and got to touch their hands, right? That was a free blood pressure and pulse check for seniors. Of course you're going to touch their hands if you're taking their pulse. There you go. See? I didn't lie, Leo said with a cheeky grin. Rex was so mad he was speechless. Technically, he was right. He glared at Leo for a long moment before sighing in defeat. Whatever. When I got back, all the non-faculty spots in the garage were taken. Some new Volkswagen CC took my spot. You know, I never thought much of them, but seeing it in person, that car is actually pretty sharp. Leo's grin widened. He pulled the car keys from his pocket and dangled them. Rex, my man, how did you know I bought a Volkswagen CC? Rex stared at the keys in Leo's hand, a powerful sense of suffocation washing over him. It was as if his soul had quietly left his body a few moments prior. He blinked, the reality of the situation slowly dawning on him. His eyebrows practically flew off his forehead as his voice rose to a screech. What the hell? Leo, you son of a bitch. You mean you couldn't find a parking spot? So you made up that whole story just to get me to leave so you could steal my spot? Caught red-handed, Leo just rubbed his nose and chuckled. Come on, Rex. It wasn't a lie. Tell me, were there or were there not a group of women at the Galleria? Screw you, you dog. Rex cursed, then tilted his head. Wait a minute, Leo. Where did you get another windfall? Last I checked, a new VWCC is close to 40 grand, right? Felix and Ned, who had been listening from the side, looked over with curiosity. Leo just shook his head and said lightly, You're better off not asking. Why not? I don't want to rub it in. That set Rex off. He pulled out a cigarette and lit it, a smirk playing on his lips. Please, Leo. It's just a VWCC. My car is a top-of-the-line Mercedes C-Class. It costs at least 15 grand more than yours. I'll admit, buying a new car is cool, but it's not enough to get to me. Go on, I can take it. Besides, my dad just sent me another 5 grand for fall break. This weekend, dinner's on me. Seeing Rex's bravado, Leo raised an eyebrow. You sure? Of course. My studio dividend came in, Leo interrupted, his voice perfectly level. $75,000 in 7 days. The cigarette smoke caught in Rex's throat. Cough, cough, cough. He stared at Leo in disbelief, the cigarette dangling from his fingers. After a moment, he let out a quiet "oh," stubbed out the cigarette, and snatched the binoculars from Felix. He wordlessly returned to the balcony to watch the cheerleaders. It was Felix whose jaw dropped. Leo, that's insane. 75 grand in 7 days? What did your studio do? Rob a bank over the break? Nah, not quite, Leo said modestly. We just had a video with a product placement go viral. Made a little bit of profit. A little bit. 75,000. Felix sighed, taking a long drag from his cigarette and slumping into a chair. We're still in college. Even after I graduate, I don't know how long it would take me to make that much. And you did it in a week. Only then did Leo turn his attention back to Rex. He was genuinely surprised. Wow, you took that pretty well, Rex. I tell you something like that, and you just act like it's nothing. Please, it's just 75 grand, Rex said dismissively, not even bothering to lower the binoculars. I'm a young master, remember? 75 grand is chump change. Leo shrugged, muttering boring, and headed into the bathroom. Once Leo, Felix, and Ned were all occupied with their own things, Rex finally lowered the binoculars. His eye was twitching, and his expression was more pain than if he'd just eaten a plate of crap. No, how is that fair? He whispered himself. Ugh, damn you, Leo. 75 grand in 7 days. At this rate, you should be the rich young master. Crestview Polytechnic, Women's Dormitory, Room 311. Phew, finally back. At 9:40 p.m., Jessie Chow pushed open the door, slightly out of breath. Haley Xia and Zoe Chong were at their desks, engrossed in a new K-drama that had just premiered. Seeing Jessie, they waved her over with big smiles. "Jessie, come here. This new show is amazing." Haley gushed, her eyes sparkling. "The lead is so hot, I can't keep my legs together." Jessie froze, her face turning bright red at Haley's crude remark. "Haley, how can you say something like that?" We're in our dorm. No one else is here," Haley said with a wink, pulling Jessie down to sit between her and Zoe. Soon, Jessie was just as captivated by the handsome male lead. The three of them watched in silence for about 10 minutes until Jessie suddenly gasped. "What's wrong?" Haley asked. "I was so busy watching TV with you guys, I didn't even notice." "Where's Isabelle? Didn't the RA say he was doing room checks at 10? Is she not back yet?" Jessie asked, worried. Haley and Zoe looked relieved. Haley shrugged and pointed toward the bathroom. "Isabelle got back about 10 minutes before you did. We tried to get her to watch with us, but she just dropped her suitcase and rushed into the bathroom. Seemed like she was washing something." "Oh, okay." Jessie patted her chest, glanced toward the bathroom, and settled back down to watch the show. None of them could have imagined what was happening inside. Isabelle stood over the sink, staring down at a pair of panties that, despite the basin being empty, were already damp. A masterpiece created by her and Leo's passionate, forgetful kissing on the sofa. After a long moment, Isabelle pressed her lips together, turned on the faucet, and began to wash them, muttering under her breath, "It's all your stupid backup phone's fault, Leo." A little after 10 o'clock, Mr. Dean Campbell, the freshman advisor for the finance program, walked into room 415. He looked around, then sniffed the air and frowned. "You guys need to cut back on the smoking. I know you're in college now and your parents aren't around, but you need to learn some self-control." "Yes, sir, of course." Felix and Ned nodded repeatedly, their faces etched with embarrassment. Leo and Rex, however, remained perfectly composed. Leo, because he didn't smoke, and Rex, because he had the hide of a rhinoceros. Not only did he feel no shame, he cleared his throat and shot a disapproving look at his roommates. "See, Ned? Felix? I told you guys to smoke less. You made the whole room stink. Now look, even our advisor can't stand it. Don't worry, Mr. Campbell, I'll talk to them." Felix and Ned exchanged a look and rolled their eyes in unison. Mr. Campbell glanced at Rex and gave a knowing but silent smile. He scanned the room's general state of cleanliness, nodded in mild approval, and started to leave for the next room. But he paused at the door as if remembering something, then walked back over to Leo. "You're Leo Yeager, right?" Yeah. What's up, Mr. Campbell?" Leo was surprised. His mind raced. He'd skipped a couple of classes before the break to deal with studio business, but he had his roommates cover for him. And then there was the night he got drunk and slept at the hotel with Isabelle, missing 2 morning classes. But he was sure no one had noticed. Crap, did he find out? A knot of anxiety formed in his stomach. But Mr. Campbell's next words put him at ease. "It's nothing, don't be nervous. I just heard from one of the junior year faculty, a professor fan, that you're involved in a media studio with some of his students. He mentioned you invested a good amount of money." Leo relaxed and nodded. It wasn't entirely unexpected. He didn't know any professor fan, but it had to be Sean or Ruby's advisor. After all, Sean had managed to rent a large office space on campus for the studio, which would have required faculty approval. It made sense their advisor knew, and that he might have mentioned it to Leo's advisor out of concern for a freshman getting in over his head. Just as he suspected, after Leo confirmed it, Mr. Campbell's expression turned serious. Starting a business in college is a good thing, and the university supports it. A successful student venture is great publicity for the school. But you're a freshman, you've barely been on campus a month, and you're already making major investments. As your advisor, I'm naturally concerned. Entrepreneurship is fine, but don't get carried away and neglect your studies. That would defeat the purpose." Hearing his well-intentioned advice, Leo nodded respectfully. "Thank you, sir. I understand. I definitely won't let it interfere with my classes or exams." "Good. That's all I needed to hear. I'll still have to write a report for the Office of Student Affairs, but if you run into any difficulties, feel free to contact me." "Will do." With that, Mr. Campbell finally left, his hands clasped behind his back. Once he was gone, Felix sidled up to Leo. "Man, if old Campbell knew you just pulled in 75 grand, his jaw would hit the floor. I know professors make decent money, but not that easily." I just got lucky," Leo said with a humble wave of his hand. Rex, however, practically ground his molars to dust. He lit a cigarette with a pained expression. "Damn, that was such a smooth flex. Why can't I ever pull off a flex like that?" The next morning, The four guys from 415 trudged to class with the dead-eyed expressions of soldiers marching to their doom. After a week off, an 8 a.m. lecture was pure torture. It wasn't until his second class, a university-wide elective, that Leo finally woke up when he saw Isabelle. She had bought soup dumplings. Before the professor arrived, she sat down next to him, opened the bag, took a small bite of the dumpling, and wrinkled her nose slightly. Then, her eyes crinkling in a smile, she held it up to his mouth. Leo, eat. This is really good. Where'd you get it? Leo asked, surprised as he chewed. Isabelle pursed her lips, her voice cool. The main campus cafeteria? Seriously? Since when are there soup dumplings this good? He was even more surprised now. He'd had them before, and had specifically complained to Rex about how bland they were. Before Isabelle could answer, P9.She, sitting next to them, let out a dramatic sigh. Leo, you still don't get it, do you? It's not the dumpling that's delicious. It's the fact that Isabelle took a bite first and fed it to you. That makes it delicious. Leo's face hardened. Nonsense. Fine, if you don't believe me, try one of mine. We got them from the same counter, Haley said, offering him one from her own bag. Leo took a skeptical bite, and his eyebrows immediately knitted together. Haley, did Rex Gal make this for you? It's awful. Haley rolled her eyes in exasperation. Isabelle, you see the crap your man is pulling? But Isabelle was already smiling. She took out another dumpling, bit off a tiny piece, and held it up to Leo, her eyes full of expectation. Without a second thought, he ate it, a look of pure satisfaction on his face. Now this is a real soup dumpling. Not like that thing Haley bought. That was definitely made by Rex Gal. Isabelle's eyes sparkled with delight. Next time, she thought, I'll buy a whole bunch and make them all pre-tasted imported soup dumplings. Nearby, Rex's mouth twitched. He was the only one in this scenario getting hurt. The world was a cruel place. After their morning classes, Leo had lunch with Isabelle at the cafeteria. They chatted for a while before he went back to the dorm to open his laptop and start typing up a proposal. He planned to go to the studio later that day to talk with Sharon about creating second and third channels. The last time he'd suggested the third channel be in a completely new niche, Sharon had shot him down. They had agreed to do more research and revisit the topic after fall break. Leo's plan was simple. If Sharon still said no, he'd call for a vote among the partners. Of course, that was just a formality. Even if Sharon managed to rally Ruby Yu and the others to his side, Leo would play his trump card, his majority shareholders' right of absolute veto. By 4 o'clock, Leo had compiled all his market research from the break and detailed his vision for the studio's future. He grabbed his laptop and headed for Starfall Studios. When he pushed open the door, he saw Don Rin at his desk, along with Mark Zhang and a few of the new staff hired over the break. Hey, Leo. The new hires greeted him respectfully. Mark, hearing them, quickly followed suit. Leo opened his mouth to tell them not to be so formal, but then he looked down at the laptop in his hand and the proposal within. He decided against it and simply nodded. He knew he was the studio's majority shareholder, but he didn't mind how Mark and the others addressed him. However, his ultimate goal was to grow the studio into a professional, powerful company. To do that, he needed to establish a certain level of authority. As for Ruby and Sharon, that was different. They were the founding members. Titles didn't matter as much between them. Don, where are Sharon and Ruby? Leo asked. I didn't see anything about a shoot in the group chat. Do they have class this afternoon? Don stopped what he was doing. No class. The boss found a new office space a couple of days ago. They finalized it this morning, and he took Ruby and Quinn to go sign the lease. I see. Any idea when they'll be back? Don checked his phone and thought for a moment. Should be soon, but I don't know if they're coming straight back here. What's up, Leo? Did you need them for something? Leo hesitated, glancing at Mark and the others busy at their desks. He decided it would be better to have this conversation elsewhere. The other employees weren't shareholders. A strategic decision like this wasn't for them to hear. Yeah, something like that, Leo said. Tell you what, Don, if you're not busy, why don't you come with me to meet them? I'll buy you guys dinner, and we can talk things over. Okay, sound good. I'll let the boss know in the group chat. Don, though quiet, had high emotional intelligence. He could tell Leo had something important to discuss and immediately stopped his work. Leo got the address of the new office space from the group chat, and soon he and Don were in his car, on their way to meet the others. By 6 o'clock, all 5 of them, Leo, Sharon, Don, Quinn Fan, and Ruby Yu, were seated in a private room at a restaurant, the table laden with food. Ruby was beaming. Don, Leo, you should have seen it. The new studio space is huge, and it's in a great location. The rent is a little high, but the environment is amazing. Just thinking about working there puts me in a good mood. She paused, her eyes sparkling as she looked at Leo. So, Is this dinner to celebrate the new office, Junior? Yeah, you could say that, Leo said with a faint smile, not wanting to dampen her enthusiasm. Quinn and Don were also smiling, clearly happy about the studio's recent success and the move to a bigger, better space. Only Sean, sitting across from Leo, looked tense. Leo didn't jump straight to business. They ate and chatted casually for a while, but eventually, the conversation turned to the studio's future. Leo took that as his cue. He put down his chopsticks, cleared his throat, and opened his laptop. Ahem, since we're on the topic of the studio's future, this is a good time to talk about something Sean and I discussed before the break. He began. My personal preference is for the second channel to continue in the same vein as Starfall Stories, but for the third channel, I want to explore a completely new niche. Sean, however, prefers. Leo looked at Sean, then laid out both of their plans for the others. Ruby, Quinn, and Don listened quietly. When he finished, he looked back at Sean. Sean, like we agreed, we both did our research, and after looking at the data, I'm more convinced than ever that my plan is the best way to make the studio bigger and stronger. Sean slowly shook his head. Leo, I understand your urgency, but I'm sticking to my original position. The studio needs to take things one step at a time. We need to be absolutely stable before we try something like that. Hearing that, Leo knew a vote was inevitable. He sighed. In that case, we'll do what we originally agreed on for major decisions. We'll vote. Fine, he said, pushing his laptop toward the others. But before you do, take a look at my proposal. I've done a detailed analysis and laid out a full plan. Sean reached into his own bag, pulled out his laptop, and opened his competing proposal. In the private room, the three of them, Ruby, Quinn, and Don, passed Leo's and Sean's laptops back and forth, reading through the proposals. Seizing the opportunity, Leo sent a quick text to P9.She, explaining the situation. To ensure a perfect victory in the upcoming vote, he needed to get his other shareholder in the room. Even though everyone knew Kevin would back him unconditionally, Leo didn't want to skip the step and give Sean ground for complaint later. While the others were still reading, Kevin had already caught an Uber from his campus and arrived at the restaurant. He pushed open the door, scratching the back of his head with a goofy grin. Hey everyone, I'm P9.She. Leo's probably mentioned me. Heard there was a meeting and a vote tonight, so I hurried over. Hope I'm not late. Not at all. Come on in, Leo said, giving Kevin a subtle nod. Kevin got the message and sat down next to him. Ruby and the others greeted Kevin warmly. Only Sean's expression darkened when he saw him. He knew exactly why Leo had called him. Another 20 minutes passed. Ruby, Quinn, and Don had finished reading both proposals. They offered them to Kevin, but he just glanced through them and chuckled. I'm definitely with Leo on this one. I don't know much about the studio stuff anyway. Leo took a sip of water. Ruby, Quinn, Don, you've all read both plans. What do you think? Ruby frowned in thought. Leo, Sean, both of your plans have merit. Leo, your plan is very forward-thinking. Expanding into a new area could bring huge opportunities. But Sean has a point, too. Our studio is just starting out. We can't get cocky just because we had one big win. I think taking it one step at a time is the more stable path. I agree, it's a tough choice, Don said quietly. Leo's plan is bold. If it works, the studio will grow exponentially. But the risk is also much higher. The boss's plan is safer, which seems more appropriate for our current stage. Quinn was silent for a moment before speaking. I actually think Leo's plan is a better fit. Sean, Ruby, Don, think about it. The whole reason we started this studio was because we saw social media as the fastest way to make a lot of money as entrepreneurs, right? Now that we have a chance to scale up, why wouldn't we take it? Even if we fail, the worst-case scenario isn't nearly as bad as where we started. Hearing this, the knot in Leo's stomach loosened. Besides having the veto, he and Kevin already represented 50% of the vote. He just needed one more person on his side, and it looked like Quinn was leaning his way. He pressed his advantage. I understand everyone's concerns, but I believe launching a new channel in a different niche is essential right now. We can't stay in our comfort zone. We have to keep challenging ourselves to achieve greater success. Besides, we can't be the ones brainstorming content forever. That's a small-time workshop model. As I mentioned in my proposal, once we have a few successful channels, we pivot toward becoming an MCN, a multi-channel network. That way, we could develop content across multiple niches and sign existing creators who already have a following. Once we successfully transition, the studio enters a virtuous cycle. We won't have to personally oversee content anymore. We can set up dedicated departments for strategy and research. He paused, then pulled up another section of his proposal. I laid it out clearly. MCNs are already a proven model on platforms like TikTok. They started on YouTube, Instagram, and other international platforms. We can model our transition on successful companies. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. After Leo finished, Sean was quiet for a moment. Leo, I admit your idea has a high chance of success, but the studio doesn't belong to just you or me. It's the result of all our hard work. As the leader of this studio, I would rather miss an opportunity than take a risk that could destroy everything we've built. He let out a long sigh. We're at an impasse. Our opinions are just too different. So, let's just vote. Seeing that Sean was completely shutting down any further attempts at persuasion, Leo bit back what he wanted to say. He finally just nodded. Fine, let's vote. Right hand for my plan, left hand for Sean's. The moment he finished speaking, Kevin's right hand shot up. Ruby, Quinn, and Don looked at each other, then at Sean. Finally, all three gave Leo an apologetic look and slowly raised their left hands. Sean visibly relaxed, a small smile touching his lips. You see, Leo, your proposal was voted down. Let's not push it. We'll follow my plan, stabilize our position, and then we can revisit your idea. By my estimate, we'll be stable in 6 months tops. 6 months is an eternity in the world of social media, Leo said quietly, shaking his head. He wasn't surprised by the outcome. Even if one of them supported him, their personal loyalty was to Sean. He was the later addition. Their relationship with Sean would always be stronger. Seeing Leo still hadn't given up, Sean stood and clapped him on the shoulder. Yes, you're right. But Leo, we decided to settle this with a vote. The results are in. You should respect that, so. Leo's normally easygoing demeanor vanished. He cut Sean off, his voice suddenly hard and serious. So, I'm vetoing the results of this vote. As soon as Leo spoke, the room fell silent. The color drained from Sean's face. He stared at Leo in disbelief. Leo, what are you doing? We agreed to decide by vote. You can't go back on your word. Leo's expression was unreadable. He turned his head to meet Sean's gaze. I'm not going back on my word, Sean. I simply believe my plan is better for the studio's future. And I gave everyone a chance to vote. The result wasn't what I wanted. As the majority shareholder, I have the right to exercise my veto. That was written very clearly in the contract we all signed. When Leo brought up the contract, Ruby, Quinn, and Don were stunned. They looked at each other, then back at Leo, their expressions a mix of shock and disbelief. They never imagined that the friendly, respectful junior who always listened to their ideas would suddenly transform like this. Sean's face hardened. He stared at Leo, saying nothing. Ruby quickly tried to smooth things over. Leo, don't be impulsive. We can talk about this more. Leo offered a faint smile. Ruby, aren't we talking right now? Don't be so tense. I just vetoed the last vote. We can always vote again. He paused. But you should all be aware, my veto power is unlimited. We can keep voting, and if I'm not satisfied with the result, I'll just keep vetoing. Hearing that, Ruby fell silent, her expression complex. She suddenly remembered something she'd said to Sean when Leo first joined the studio. So, that means he has the final say in everything? He could even overrule you, the leader of the studio? Yes, but don't worry. He's just an investor handling market research. The technical skills are all ours. There's a lot he doesn't know, so we'll still have to make decisions together. Besides, how ambitious can a freshman be? He just has a higher title on paper. Thinking back, Ruby gave a bitter smile. A casual warning she'd made had become a prophecy. The atmosphere in the room was painfully awkward, but Leo remained perfectly calm. He knew he couldn't back down now, or they would remain at a stalemate forever, given their loyalty to Sean. Just then, Quinn broke the silence. Ahem. Well, since Leo isn't satisfied with the result, let's just vote again. Based on the last vote, he just needs one of us to switch sides for his plan to pass. In that case, I'll vote for him. Quinn's words made Sean's eyes widen. He stared at his friend. Quinn gave a wry smile. Sean, I honestly thought Leo's proposal was good from the start, but yours made sense too. But now that he's used his veto, I think we should give his plan a shot. According to his contract, he has the veto power, but we don't. Instead of staying deadlocked, why don't we just support him? Think about it. Without his investment, we wouldn't be where we are today. And from what I understand, the only reason our last video made so much money was because of the ad placement. And it was Leo who insisted on getting that deal before the break. All things considered, he's not impulsive or reckless. If he's this insistent today, it's because he's thought it through. Quinn stated his case seriously. Ruby and Don's expressions shifted as they listened. From an objective standpoint, he was right. Both of the studio's recent major successes had been thanks to Leo's persistence. But Sean still couldn't accept it. No matter how he felt, though, the tide had turned. Leo smiled, giving Quinn a grateful look. Thanks, Quinn. Well, the vote has been decided. And since no one but me has veto power, this result is final. I'll finalize the proposal as soon as possible, and we'll start executing it as soon as we move into the new office. Knowing Sean needed space, Leo gave a nod to Kevin, then stood up. Well, I'm going to take Kevin back to his campus. Sean, take some time to cool off. I'm really not trying to go against you. I'm just doing what's best for the studio. Leo, you forget it. I guess I just misjudged you, Sean said, his gaze complicated as he let out a heavy sigh. Leo didn't reply. He just left the room with Kevin. On the way back, Kevin asked worriedly, Leo, did you just burn a bridge with that guy? Leo's tone was light as he shook his head. Nah, Sean's not that petty. He knows I'm doing this for the studio. He just thinks my plan is too risky. He's afraid of failure. It's not a burned bridge. Okay then. Kevin decided to drop the subject. He finally had a chance to look around. So whose car is this? Looks brand new. Oh right, I forgot to tell you. I just bought it today. Kevin's eyes bugged out. What the hell you bought a car? Dude, I hate you so much right now. After dropping Kevin off, Leo drove back to CPI. He parked in the garage and sent Isabelle a text. Where you up to? If you're not busy, come down. I'll take you for a walk around the track. Okay, be right there. The reply was almost instantaneous. Leo looked at his phone and couldn't help but smile. It seemed like she'd been holding her phone, just waiting for him to message her. Thinking of that, his mind drifted back to the tense scene in the private room. He sighed. He didn't want to be so aggressive, but if he hadn't been, the studio wouldn't move in the direction he needed it to, and the gap between his world and Isabelle's would take that much longer to close. Just as Sean said, he'd rather miss an opportunity than take a risk. But Leo couldn't afford to miss this one. Soon, he saw Isabelle jogging over to where he was waiting by the track entrance. When she reached him, the usual cool intensity in her eyes had softened. What were you doing in the dorm? He asked with a smile. Watching a K-drama with Haley and the others. TSK, you need to watch less of that stuff. You're already completely whipped. ? She looked at him blankly for a second before her expression snapped back to its usual cool composure. She lifted her chin at him and said haughtily, Leo, tonight we're just holding hands and walking. No going into the woods. He looked at her, confused. Why not? Because I just changed into new underwear. Leo was completely lost. What did new underwear have to do with making out in the woods?